Hi guys, tonight we step into a world so old and quiet that it has almost slipped through the fingers of history. You find yourself near a dim fire beneath a wide dark sky, with cold air resting on your face and the faint smell of smoke drifting through the night. Around you there are no cities, no written names, no kings carved into stone. Just soft footsteps, low voices, animal calls in the distance, and the patient breathing of people who lived long before civilization learned to announce itself. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And as you settle in, tell me where you're watching from and what your local time is. It is always strangely comforting to imagine little pools of lamplight all around the world, each one joining this same quiet journey. Now dim the lights, and let your eyes adjust to a darkness older than any empire. You're standing before the first clear edge of a forgotten age, a long stretch of human life that left almost nothing behind. Not because nothing happened. That would be far too simple, and honestly a little rude to several thousand generations of very busy people. It is because most of what mattered to them was made from things the earth is very good at taking back. Wood rots, hide decays, woven fibres loosen and vanish. A child's toy made from bark returns to soil. A shelter of branches collapses, softens in rain, and becomes part of the forest floor. Even footprints, those tender little signatures of being alive, are usually gone by the next wind. Before you move deeper into the camp, you pause to understand the wider world. This is not the age of farms, roads, coins, or written laws. For most of human existence, people lived as hunters, gatherers, makers, walkers, listeners, and rememberers. Mainstream archaeology tells us that Homo sapiens emerged in Africa roughly 300,000 years ago, while agriculture began much later, only around 10,000 to 12,000 years ago, in several parts of the world. So the vast majority of the human story happened before villages, before temples, before anyone thought to make a tax receipt, which may be one of the few comforting things about prehistory. You walk slowly over packed earth, careful not to disturb the sleeping shapes near the fire. The ground feels cool beneath your feet. Nearby a few stones sit in a loose circle, blackened by flame. The embers glow softly like sleepy red eyes. Someone has placed dry wood beside them ready for the morning. The smell is warm and sharp, mixed with damp grass and animal hide. You notice how little there is and yet how much there is. A piece of shaped stone lies beside a bundle of sinew. A scraping tool rests near a hide stretched over a simple frame. A few shells pierced carefully are tucked into a pouch. These objects feel small, but they're not simple. They belong to minds that planned, remembered, taught, and cared. This is one of the strange lessons of the hidden era. Evidence is not the same as importance. The things that survive are often stone bone teeth and ash. The things that vanish are laughter, lullabies, recipes, warnings, jokes, and the exact way someone tied a knot so it would not slip in the rain. You crouch beside a stone flake, its edge still sharp enough to catch the faint firelight. It is a mainstream historical fact that stone tools are among the most common surviving traces of early humans, partly because stone endures when nearly everything else disappears. Archaeologists use them to study movement, skill, diet, and even social learning. A tool is never just a tool. It is a frozen gesture. But nearby there may once have been a basket, a wooden spear shaft, a sling, a soft bag, or a mat woven from reeds. Those things would have mattered every day. They simply did not survive. This leads to one of the great quiet puzzles of the human past. Researchers continue to question how much of early human technology was actually made from perishable materials, because the archaeological record may preserve only a small, stone-shaped shadow of daily life. You sit near the fire, not too close, just enough to feel the warmth touch your knees. Around you, the people of this camp breathe slowly and sleep. Their clothing rustles when they turn. A child murmurs and settles closer to an older body. Somewhere beyond the glow, an animal moves through dry grass, then stops. The night listens. You might wonder how these people understood time. Not time as clocks and calendars, of course. No one here is checking whether it's 11:47, and they should really stop scrolling. Time comes through light, cold hunger, ripening plants, animal movement, and the moon's slow-changing face. The world is not scheduled, it is observed. A woman near the edge of the fire wakes briefly. She lifts her head, listens, then relaxes. Her hair is dark against the hide beneath her. Beside her, a tool handle catches the faint glow. It may be wood carefully smoothed by use. Tomorrow, perhaps she will carry it while gathering plants, cutting roots, or preparing hides. The exact task is uncertain, but the skill is not. The hidden area is not empty. It is crowded with work. There is the work of finding water, the work of remembering which berries nourish and which punish, because nature does enjoy setting little traps. There is the work of tracking animals, cleaning skins, soothing babies, repairing tools, watching weather, and recognizing the difference between an ordinary silence and the kind of silence that means something nearby is also listening. You breathe in. Smoke curls upward. The stars are intense, scattered across the sky in a brightness modern eyes rarely see. Without streetlight screens or bedroom lamps, night is enormous. It presses gently around the camp, but the fire makes a small island of human warmth. Somewhere in this darkness, stories are waiting. Not written stories, not carved into palace walls, but spoken ones. Stories of the good river bend, the dangerous cliff, the ancestor who found honey, the time the herd moved early, the place where red stone can be gathered, the joke about someone who stepped directly into mud and pretended it was intentional. That last part is not proven naturally. But people have always been people. A quirky little tidbit from archaeology is that some ancient footprints preserve not only movement, but moments of ordinary life. At sites like White Sands in New Mexico, fossilized human footprints show people moving across a vanished landscape thousands of years ago, including tracks that suggest children were present. Even deep prehistory, it seems, had small feet wandering where adults might have preferred they did not. You look down at the ground near your own feet. The soil is plain, dark, and soft. If someone walked here tomorrow, no one in the far future would ever know. That is the tenderness of this age. It was lived completely yet recorded accidentally. The people here do not know they are prehistoric. They are not waiting to become a chapter in a textbook. They are simply alive. They feel the same cold. They know tiredness. They recognize affection. They probably complain in whatever words or gestures they use when someone fails to bring enough dry wood. They wake, eat, teach, worry, rest, and begin again. And as you sit quietly among them, you begin to understand the hidden era not as a blank space before history, but as a vast human night filled with small lights. Most of those lights have gone out from the record, but not all. A stone edge, a hearth, a footprint, a bead, a burial, a trace of pigment on cave wall. Enough remains to invite you forward. The fire lowers, the camp settles. You wrap your arms round yourself against the cool air and look toward the dark line of land beyond the glow. Somewhere out there an ancient river waits its bank soft with mud, its water reflecting dawn before dawn has arrived. Soon you will follow it. You leave the low fire behind as the night thins into the first grey hour before sunrise. The camp remains quiet, wrapped in sleep, while the horizon slowly gathers colour. No one speaks yet. Even the birds seem to be considering whether morning is worth the effort, which is honestly very relatable. Ahead of you lies the river, or rather what will one day become a vanished riverbed. Buried, shifted, dried, flooded, and hidden beneath layers of earth. But here in this older world it moves softly through the landscape, wide and patient, carrying reflected stars on its dark surface. Mist rises from the water in pale folds. The air smells of mud, wet stone reeds, and cold morning. Before you step closer, you remember the wider world around this place. In deep prehistory, rivers were not scenery. They were roads, kitchens, washing places, warning systems, borders, and gathering points. long before paved streets or marked trails, water-shaped, where people moved and where they paused. Mainstream archaeology shows that many early human sites are found near ancient rivers, lakes, springs and coastlines, because water drew animals, plants and people together. You walk down a slope where grass brushes your legs with dew. The soil is soft enough to hold your footprint for a little while, though probably not long enough to impress anyone 20,000 years from now. A person from the camp is already awake near the bank, crouched beside the shallows. Their movements are slow and practiced. One hand steadies a container made from something that will almost certainly disappear in time. Bark hide-woven fibre, perhaps. The record will not be kind to it. The river makes a low murmuring sound, not loud, not dramatic, just constant. You hear insects near the reeds. Farther away something splashes, then the rings widen and fade. The morning is cool enough that your fingers ache a little. A thin strand of smoke from camp drifts behind you, barely visible in the blue light. You watch as water is gathered, not casually but carefully. Clean water matters. Muddy water matters too, because mud holds tracks. A soft bank can tell stories from the night. You step beside the crouching figure and see marks pressed into the damp ground. Hooves, bird feet, a deeper print from a larger animal, human feet overlapping some of them. This river is a page rewritten every morning. In a modern house, water arrives with a twist of the wrist, and we rarely applaud the plumbing, which seems unfair to the plumbing. Here every drink has a location, a season, and a risk. The river gives, but it also attracts. Animals come to drink. Predators may follow. Floods can erase a camp in a single night. The same water that keeps people alive can force them to move. You follow the bank upstream. Reeds stand tall and whisper together. Their leaves feel smooth and cold when your fingers brush them. Dragonflies hover above the surface, their wings catching the weak light. Near a bend, someone has left a cluster of stones in the mud. Perhaps they were used to weigh something down. Perhaps they marked a place. Perhaps they are simply stones, and future researchers will be very polite while arguing about them. That is part of the hidden era too, interpretation. Researchers continue to question how much early human life centered around river corridors, compared with open grasslands, forests, or coastal routes. Some evidence points to rivers as major pathways for migration and survival, while other scholars emphasize that humans were flexible, moving through many different environments. The truth may be beautifully inconvenient. People used what worked, and what worked changed with the weather. The herds, the seasons, and the memory of the group. At the river's edge, a young person kneels with an older one learning to read the mud. The older hand points to a track. Not just the shape, but the depth. Not just the direction, but the freshness. You can almost hear the lesson without knowing the words. This one passed before dawn. This one was heavy. This one slipped. This one came to drink and left quickly. Knowledge here is not stored in books. It is stored in bodies, habits, gestures, and repeated attention. A child learns by watching where adults place their feet, how they hold silence when they laugh, when they stop laughing. Education is everywhere. The classroom has mud reeds, mosquitoes, and absolutely no standardized testing, which is perhaps one of its finest features. You continue along the bank until you reach a shallow place where stones break the surface. The water is clear enough to show pebbles below brown, grey, and red. Tiny fish flicker between them. The current presses against your ankles with a steady chill. You understand why a crossing matters. A river can divide a world into near and far. It can also connect one valley to another, one group to another, one season's camp to the next. A mainstream historical fact rests quietly beneath this scene. During the Pleistocene, the epoch that shaped much of early human evolution, climates shifted repeatedly between colder and warmer periods. Rivers expanded, dried, changed course, and created corridors of life across landscapes that could otherwise be harsh. Early humans did not live in one fixed kind of world. They lived through change again and again, On a gravel bar you notice bits of broken stone. Some may be natural, some may not. A few flakes have the unmistakable look of having been struck from a larger core. Sharp edges, curved surfaces, human intention in miniature. Someone may have sat here yesterday or years ago making tools while watching the current. The stone would survive. The person's thoughts would not. Nearby, a small heap of shells rests where the bank rises. This may be a meal place or simply where water left them, but in many ancient sites, shells and fish bones help reveal diets that were more varied than old stereotypes allowed. A lesser-known tidbit is that some early human groups made use of freshwater shellfish, small fish water plants and seasonal river foods that rarely receive the heroic attention given to mammoth hunts. History loves a dramatic spear, but dinner often comes from patience mud and a good eye for what is edible. The sun lifts higher now, turning the mist gold. People from the camp begin to arrive in ones and twos. A child carries something bundled in hide. An adult scans the opposite bank. Someone bends to wash their hands, rubbing fingers together, then shaking off cold droplets. The day is beginning not with a grand announcement, but with ordinary tasks. You feel the texture of the morning settle around you. Damp air on your cheeks, the smell of crushed reeds, the tiny clicking of stones underfoot, the river's constant voice. This place will not last. Not in this form. One day the current may shift, the bank may collapse, the camp may move, silt may cover the stones and roots may enter the old hearth. Far in the future, someone might drill into the earth, study sediments, date minerals, examine pollen, and try to reconstruct the vanished waterway. They may never know the name of the child who laughed here, or the person who preferred this bend because the morning light was kind. But you know for this quiet moment that the river is alive with human meaning. You turn back toward the camp as smoke rises more strongly now. The smell of breakfast, faint and earthy, begins to drift through the air. Behind you, the river keeps moving, carrying leaves, silt reflections, and secrets. Ahead, the people are waking, reaching for tools, preparing for the long work of another day. And as you walk, your own footprints fill slowly with water shining briefly in the new light before the mud softens and forgets. By the time you return from the river, the camp has begun to stir in small, sleepy movements. The fires bright are now fed with dry branches that crack softly as they catch. Smoke lifts into the morning air, blue and thin, carrying the scent of charred wood, damp grass, and something faintly earthy being warmed near the coals. You sit near the edge of the hearth, close enough to feel heat on your shins, far enough that your face stays cool. Around you, people move with the quiet purpose of those who have done these tasks many times before. No one seems rushed. The day has demands certainly, but it has not yet become noisy. The light is still gentle, the shadows still long. Before you watch the work begin, it helps to understand the world of tools in this hidden era. Early humans lived without metal wheels, pottery for much of the period, or written instructions taped helpfully to the wall. Their technology was made from stone, bone, antler, shell, wood, sinew, plant fibre, hide and fire. A mainstream historical fact is that stone tool making goes back millions of years among earlier human relatives, long before Homo sapiens, and by the time our species spread widely, tool traditions had already become highly skilled and varied. You notice a person sitting cross-legged near a flat stone. Their hands are steady. In front of them rests a larger piece of flint or chert, dark and glossy along one edge. They hold another stone as a hammer. For a while, nothing happens except looking, turning, testing weight, listening somehow with the eyes. Then comes the strike. A clear little sound snaps through the morning. Not loud, but precise. A flake leaps away from the core and lands near the person's knee. Its edge catches the firelight. You can see the curve of the break, smooth as frozen water. The maker picks it up, turns it once and sets it aside. There is no ceremony, but there is skill everywhere. You lean closer and hear the soft tap of stone on stone. Each strike is chosen. Too hard and the piece shatters badly. Too soft and nothing useful happens. It is a patient craft halfway between knowledge and feel. Today, someone might call it experimental archaeology, lithic technology, or controlled fracture mechanics. Here it is simply how you make a blade sharp enough to cut, hide, meet wood roots, and whatever else the day decides to place in your path. A child watches from nearby chin resting on their knees. They do not interrupt. Their eyes follow each movement. Sometimes the adult pauses and places a rejected flake in the child's hand. The child touches the edge carefully, then smiles with the private satisfaction of being trusted near something sharp. Some things in human life have changed a great deal. Others, like children wanting to be included in the adult work, while adults pretend not to be nervous, have remained beautifully familiar. You hear scraping nearby. Another person is using a stone tool to clean a hide stretched across a frame of branches. The sound is dry and rhythmic, like a slow brush over rough cloth. The hide gives off a strong smell, not unpleasant exactly, but real. Animals smoke fat earth. Your modern laundry detergent would have many opinions about it. The work matters. Hides can become clothing, bedding, wraps, bags, shelter coverings, or bindings. But hide rarely survives for tens of thousands of years unless conditions are unusually kind, like freezing dryness or waterlogged protection. So much of this world once surrounded human bodies every day, then vanished. That is why the stone tools seem to speak so loudly in museums. They are the survivors, yet they were only part of a larger toolkit. A quirky and lesser-known tidbit is that some prehistoric people used natural adhesives, including birch tar, to attach stone points to wooden shafts. Making birch tar can require heating bark in low oxygen conditions, which suggests careful control of materials and fire. Imagine that for a moment. Long before hardware stores, someone was essentially making glue through a slow, smoky process that would probably ruin a modern kitchen and deeply confuse the smoke alarm. Near the fire, another tool is being assembled. A flake is fitted into a split wooden handle. Sinew is wrapped tightly around it, wet at first, then shrinking as it dries. Perhaps resin or pitch helps hold it in place. Fingers press and test. The maker turns the tool in the light. A small adjustment is made, then another. Researchers remain divided on how early and how widely complex hafting techniques spread among different human groups. Some scholars see these composite tools as signs of advanced planning and shared knowledge, while others caution that the evidence is uneven because the wooden handles and bindings usually decay. Again, the earth keeps the stone and quietly eats the rest of the story. You watch as a woman lifts a finished scraper and runs her thumb near knot on the edge. She nods, not dramatically, just enough. The tool is ready. There is something calming about the repetition. Strike, turn, scrape, wrap, test. The camp sounds like a workshop, but a soft one. No metal ringing, no engines, no electric hum, just breath flame, stone fibre, and the occasional irritated mutter when a flake breaks badly, because even the deep past had quality control issues. You move toward a shaded patch where bone and antler pieces are laid out. Some are smooth from handling. One has been shaped into a point. Another may become an awl, useful for piercing hides. Bone tools tell a different story from stone. They suggest sewing, fastening, shaping, and delicate work. The world here is not only about survival in the dramatic sense, it is also about repair. A tear in clothing must be fixed. A bag must be strengthened. A sleeping place must be made warmer. A spear point must be replaced before it is needed, not after. A toolmaker is someone who thinks ahead, someone who imagines tomorrow's problem while the fire is still burning today. You pick up in your mind the weight of one small flake. It is light, almost nothing. Yet in the hand of someone skilled, it can open a carcass, cut a cord scrape, a hide-shaped wood, or prepare food. It can save time. It can protect skin from cold. It can turn raw material into comfort. That word comfort feels important. We often imagine early humans only as survivors, always tense beneath a hostile sky. But here, beside the fire, you see that they also made life more manageable, more familiar, more human. Tools were not only weapons or hunting gear, they were the quiet helpers of ordinary living. The morning grows warmer, light spreads over the camp. A bird calls from somewhere beyond the river. Someone laughs softly when a child tries to strike a stone and produces only a dull clunk. The adult takes the child's hands, adjusts the angle, and lets them try again. This is teaching without writing. Memory passing through muscle, culture travelling from one body to another, and perhaps that is the true hidden evidence, the part no museum case can hold. Not just the tool, but the lesson. Not just the edge, but the patience behind it. Not just the broken flakes left in the dirt, but the many mornings of watching, trying, failing, and slowly learning how stone listens when struck the right way. As the fire settles into a steady glow, you look around at the scattered tools, the hides, the bundles of wood, the shaped bone, the quiet hands. Almost everything here will disappear, but for now it is whole. The day waits beyond the camp, full of hunger-weather walking and small decisions. Someone rises carrying a newly made tool toward the trees. You follow at a gentle distance, hearing the soft crunch of earth beneath your feet and the fading tap of stones still echoing behind you. You follow the figure carrying the newly made tool toward the edge of the camp, where the ground rises slightly and the trees begin to gather more closely together. The light filters through branches in thin strips, soft and pale, brushing over bark and leaf. The air here feels different from the open riverbank. It is still cool, but richer, somehow filled with the scent of damp wood, crushed plants, and something faintly sweet that you cannot quite name. Not far from the trees, you notice the outlines of something that might easily be missed if you were not looking for it. A shelter. At first glance, it barely seems like a structure at all. A few curved branches are pressed into the earth, bent toward one another in a loose frame. Over them, layers of material are draped. Some look like hides, others like bundles of leaves or grass. The edges are weighed down with stones or tucked into the soil. There is no door in the modern sense, just an opening low and narrow, facing slightly away from the wind. You pause, letting your eyes adjust. This is not a house that intends to last. It is something closer to a pause in the landscape, a place where people have chosen for now to stay. To understand this moment, it helps to step back again into the wider pattern of human life at this time. For most of prehistory, people did not build permanent homes. Archaeological findings indicate that early human groups often created temporary shelters, using materials available nearby, especially in environments where mobility was essential. Following animals, seasonal plants, and changing weather meant that staying in one place for too long could be a disadvantage rather than a comfort. You crouch slightly and step closer to the entrance. The ground beneath your feet feels softer here, layered with plant matter that has been pressed down over repeated use. You can almost sense where people have sat, where they have slept, where their bodies have warmed the space night after night. Inside the shelter is dim but not dark. Light slips through small gaps in the covering, creating faint patterns on the ground. The air holds a gentle warmth trapped from bodies and perhaps from embers carried in earlier. It smells of hide smoke and human presence. Not unpleasant, just lived in. You sit carefully near the edge, noticing how low the ceiling is. You cannot stand fully upright here, and that seems intentional. A smaller space is easier to warm, easier to maintain, easier to leave behind when needed. Efficiency is quiet, but it is everywhere. A bundle rests near one wall. It might contain tools or clothing or gathered food. There are no shelves, no cupboards, no neat rows of labelled containers. Organisation exists, but it is held in memory rather than written lists. People know where things are because they place them there, because they remember. You run your fingers lightly over the ground. It is dry in places, slightly damp in others. There may be layers here, subtle traces of time. If this shelter remains long enough, perhaps a few weeks or months, those layers might build. Ash plant fibres, bits of bone, fragments of stone. Later, much later, someone might find these traces and try to reconstruct what happened here, but much will be missing. An interesting detail often overlooked is that some of the earlier shelters would have been built almost entirely from materials that decay quickly. Wood leaves, grasses, and animal skins rarely survive for thousands of years unless preserved under very specific conditions. This means that the archaeological record likely underrepresents how often and how skillfully early humans constructed living spaces. You lean back slightly, imagining the rhythm of night spent here, the sound of wind against the outer covering, the faint rustle of someone turning in sleep, the soft breathing of several people sharing a small enclosed warmth, perhaps the occasional drip of water during rain. The comfort of being close together in a world that can feel very large and very exposed. Outside, you hear footsteps approach. Someone ducks into the shelter carrying a bundle of plant material. They move with familiarity, placing it near the wall, adjusting a loose section of covering where light has been slipping through. The motion is quick, practiced. Maintenance is constant even in something so temporary. You might think of modern homes' solid walls, insulation doors that lock roofs that keep out rain for decades. But those homes come with a different kind of stillness. Here the shelter breathes with the environment. It responds, it changes. It can be rebuilt, reshaped, or abandoned without regret. There is a certain freedom in that. Still, not all researchers agree on how often early humans relied on constructed shelters versus natural ones like caves or rock overhangs. Some scholars suggest that open-air structures may have been more common than the evidence shows, while others caution that without strong physical remains it is difficult to estimate their true frequency. The debate remains gentle but persistent, like a question that refuses to settle. You shift slightly and notice a small object near your knee. A piece of cord, perhaps made from twisted plant fibres. It is worn, slightly frayed. You pick it up carefully. It feels surprisingly strong for something so thin. Cordage like this could bind tools, secure coverings, tie bundles, or even create simple nets. The presence of cord changes everything. With cord you can fasten. With fastening you can build more complex structures. You can repair. You can carry more. You can plan further ahead. It is a small invention with large consequences, though it leaves almost no trace behind. A faint breeze moves through the entrance, lifting the edge of a hide. Light shifts across the interior, then settles again. Outside, voices murmur softly. The day is unfolding, drawing people outward toward tasks that cannot wait. You remain for a moment longer, absorbing the quiet of this place. This shelter, simple as it is, represents a kind of decision. To stop, to gather, to rest together, even if only for a short time, even if tomorrow brings movement again. You step back out into the open air, blinking slightly as the brightness increases. The camp feels more active now. People move between fire tools and the edges of the trees. A child runs past you laughing briefly before being called back. The sound fades into the general hum of morning life. Behind you, the shelter stands quietly, almost blending into the landscape. If you did not know it was there, you might walk past without noticing. And if you returned in a few seasons or a few years, there might be nothing left at all. No walls, no roof, no sign that people once slept, spoke, repaired, and dreamed in that exact place. And yet for this moment it is home. You take a slow breath, feeling the warmth of the rising sun on your skin. Ahead the forest waits, filled with paths that are not paths, with food that must be recognized, with risks that must be understood. You begin to walk, leaving the shelter behind, knowing that it will not follow you into the future, except in the faintest possible traces. You move away from the shelter and follow the others toward the edge of the forest, where morning light settles in soft patches across leaves, stones, and damp earth. The path is not really a path, not yet. It is a memory worn into movement. Feet have passed here before, careful and quiet, finding the easiest way between roots and low branches. The air smells green and cold. Wet bark. Crushed grass. the faint sweetness of berries somewhere nearby. A bird calls once then again, as if asking the forest whether everyone is awake. Apparently the answer is yes, unfortunately, for anyone hoping to sleep in. Before you step deeper among the trees, it helps to understand the world of food in this hidden age. The people do not farm, they do not plant rows of grain, or keep barns filled with stored harvests. Instead, they live by knowing the landscape in intimate detail. Studies of hunter-gatherer life, ancient remains, and plant residues suggest that early human diets were often broad and flexible, including meat, fish, shellfish, roots, nuts, fruits, seeds, leaves, insects, honey, and seasonal plants. In other words, dinner was not one thing, it was a conversation with the land. You follow a small group moving slowly beneath the trees. No one rushes. Their eyes scan the ground, the branches, the spaces beneath shrubs. One person carries a digging stick, its end hardened by fire. Another holds a woven bag or pouch made from fibres that will probably vanish long before any future scholar can admire the craftsmanship. A child walks nearby, half helpful, half distracted, which is a very ancient balance. You hear the soft scrape of the digging stick entering soil. A woman kneels, loosening earth around a plant with long leaves. Her fingers work gently, not tearing too quickly. She knows what lies below. After a moment, she pulls up a root pale and coated in dark soil. She brushes it clean against grass, studies it, and places it in the bag. You notice how much knowledge lives inside that small action. Which plant, which season, which part to eat, how deeply to dig, whether it must be cooked, whether it is safe for children, whether taking too much will mean fewer plants later. The forest is not a supermarket, though the comparison is tempting. A supermarket has signs aisles and someone else doing the dangerous guessing. Here knowledge is survival. A mistake may bring sickness. A missed opportunity may mean hunger. But skill turns this place into abundance, quiet and scattered, waiting for eyes trained to see it. A lesser-known detail is that plant foods probably played a much larger role in prehistoric diets than popular images often suggest. Meat leaves bones. Stone points survive, but soft fruits, leaves, tubers, and seeds disappear easily unless they are charred, trapped in dental calculus, or preserved in unusual conditions. So the old picture of early humans dining mostly on dramatic big game hunts is incomplete, and frankly a little too fond of spears. Nearby, someone bends to gather small seeds from a grass-like plant. They hold a basket under the seed heads and tap them gently. Tiny grains fall with a dry whisper. It is slow work, almost meditative. Tap, shift, tap, breathe. You can imagine the sound becoming part of the morning as familiar as the river. There is ongoing discussion among researchers about how intensively early humans managed wild plants before formal agriculture. Some argue that people may have encouraged useful plants returned to favoured patches, burned landscapes carefully, or scattered seeds long before farming began. Others caution that the evidence is hard to separate from natural plant growth and ordinary gathering. The line between foraging and farming, it seems, may have been less like a wall and more like a foggy path. You walk on. The forest opens into a patch of lower shrubs. Here the sunlight is warmer and insects drift in small clouds. A child points excitedly at berries tucked beneath leaves. An adult stops them with a soft sound, then picks one berry, crushes it, slightly smells it and nods. Only then does gathering begin. The berries are dark, almost black, with a dusty bloom on their skins. They stain fingers. One bursts between thumb and palm, releasing a sweet, sharp scent. A few are eaten immediately. Most go into the pouch. People here understand the difference between pleasure and planning. Eat some now. Carry some back. Dry some if the weather allows. Share some with those who stayed near camp. Food is social. It binds the group as surely as cord binds a tool. You hear laughter behind you as someone finds a cluster of nuts hidden beneath leaf litter. The shells are hard, smooth and cool. Cracking them will take effort, but the reward is rich and filling. A stone may serve as a hammer, another stone may serve as an anvil. The simplest tools often do the most dependable work. The group pauses near a fallen tree. Its bark is peeling away damp and dark underneath. Someone uses a stick to probe gently into the rotting wood. Insects scatter. Larvae appear pale and soft. You may not feel immediate enthusiasm, which is fair. Modern snack preferences can be delicate. But in many foraging societies, insects and larvae are valuable sources of fat and protein. The past was practical. It did not always ask whether something looked appetizing under restaurant lighting. A person collects them calmly into a leaf cup. You continue toward the sound of water, not the main river, but a smaller stream threading through stones. Here the air cools again. Moss grows thick on fallen branches. Someone lifts a flat stone at the water's edge and a small creature darts away. Another person reaches with quick hands and catches something you barely see. Perhaps a crab, a fish, or a freshwater animal small enough to vanish from the record, but meaningful enough for a meal. The stream smells clean and mineral-rich. You hear water clicking over pebbles. A person rinses roots, rubbing away soil until the pale surfaces gleam. Another wraps leaves around gathered food to keep it damp. Every task is quiet, but none is simple. You begin to understand that foraging is not wandering randomly, in hope that lunch presents itself with good manners. It is a deep map of timing memory, taste weather and cooperation. People know that certain roots are best after frost, that some nuts must be leached or roasted. That honey may be found if you follow bees patiently enough. The shellfish beds return with the tides, that berries ripen first on warmer slopes. Back at camp, someone may be waiting with fire ready. Some foods need roasting to soften fibres or reduce toxins. Others may be pounded, soaked, scraped, dried, or mixed. Even without pottery, people could process foods using skins, baskets, pits, hot stones, leaves, and wooden containers. Much of that technology has vanished, but the meals were real. The sun rises higher and the group begins to turn back. Bags are heavier now. Fingers are stained. Knees are damp from kneeling. Someone carries a bundle of roots over one shoulder. The child who was distracted earlier now walks with great seriousness, holding 3 berries in both hands as though entrusted with the fate of the species. Perhaps in a way they are. You return through the forest more slowly than you entered. The light has changed. The smell of smoke grows stronger as the camp comes near. You hear voices before you see the shelters. A few people look up as the gatherers arrive, noting what has been found. Food is placed near the fire, sorted by type, use, and urgency. Some roots go close to the coals. Seeds are set aside. Berries are shared by hand. The little stream animals are inspected, cleaned, and prepared. Nothing looks like a feast in the grand painted hall sense. There are no golden plates, no banquet music, no dramatic toast from a nobleman who has had too much wine. But this is a feast of attention. Every bite came from memory. You sit near the fire as roots begin to steam lightly in the heat. The smell is earthy and comforting. A child licks berry juice from their fingers. Someone cracks a nut with a stone, and the sound is small, sharp, satisfying. The hidden era continues not through monuments but through meals like this, gathered, shared, warmed by flame, forgotten by history perhaps, but not by the people who lived them. You take in the softness of the moment, the warmth on your face, the cool ground beneath you, the quiet pleasure of food returning safely to camp. And for now that is enough. After the gathered food has been placed near the fire, the camp settles into a slower rhythm. The bright edge of morning has softened into a mild open light. Smoke rises in loose strands, drifting through the shelters and into the trees, carrying the smell of roasted roots. Warm stones, drying hides, and damp wood slowly becoming ash. You sit near the edge of the hearth and watch the children. They are everywhere once you begin to notice them. Not in a loud, separate world of their own, but woven into the life of the group. One crouches near a pile of flakes, sorting them with intense seriousness. Another leans against an older sibling half asleep despite the day already beginning. A smaller child follows an adult with a determined wobble, holding a stick that may be a tool, a toy, a walking staff, or all three, depending on the child's current sense of destiny. To understand this part of the hidden era, you need to loosen a modern idea. Childhood here is not arranged around school, Belle's plastic toys, packed lunches, or someone gently panicking over screen time. In prehistoric foraging societies, children likely learned by watching copying, playing listening, and joining in tasks gradually. Ethnographic studies of recent hunter-gatherer communities suggest that children often gained practical skills through observation and participation rather than formal lessons. You watch a young girl sit beside an adult who is scraping a hide. The girl has a smaller tool, duller and safer, though still treated with respect. She copies the movement, scrape forward, pause, adjust, scrape again. Her strokes are uneven. She removes very little. The adult does not interrupt at first. The lesson is in the doing. Nearby, two boys run toward the edge of the camp and stop when called back by a low voice. The warning is not harsh, but it is enough. The trees beyond the camp are not evil, of course. Trees rarely are, despite what dark fairy tales imply. But the world outside the watch space contains hazards, snakes, deep water, sharp stones, animals, sudden weather. The young learn boundaries long before they understand why those boundaries matter. A baby rests against someone's chest wrapped in a soft hide. The hide is worn smooth from you smelling faintly of smoke and milk. The person carrying the baby continues working, shifting weight from one hip to the other with practiced ease. Hands remain busy. Eyes remain watchful. Caregiving is not separate from survival. It is survival. One important point from human evolution is that our species has unusually long childhoods compared with many animals. Human children take years to become independent, and during those years, they require food protection, teaching, and patience. That long dependency is costly, but it also allows learning. Complex tools, social rules, plant knowledge, tracking language, and memory all take time. Childhood is not a delay before useful life. It is where culture quietly enters the body. You hear laughter near the river path. A group of children are making prints in damp soil. One presses a hand into mud, lifts it, and admires the shape. Another steps beside it, leaving toes clearly marked. The mud squeezes between their feet, cold and soft. For a brief moment, the ground holds their play. An overlooked detail from the archaeological record is that children's traces sometimes survive in surprising ways. At some prehistoric sites, small footprints, finger marks in clay, and tiny hand stencils on cave walls suggest that children were not merely passive background figures. They moved through work areas, entered caves, handled materials, and left marks of their own. The past, even the very deep past, had children underfoot, which, if we are honest, is exactly where children often prefer to be. The older children begin a game with sticks. Not wild fighting, not exactly. More like practice disguised as play. They creep behind shrubs, point toward imagined animals, then scatter, giggling when one trips over a root. An adult watches with half an eye. No one calls it trainers, but it is. Balance aim, silence, teamwork, reading movement. The body learns through games before anyone explains the theory. There is continuing debate over how much we can infer about prehistoric childhood from surviving evidence. Some researchers argue that children's roles have been underestimated because archaeologists traditionally focused on adult tools hunting and big events. Others warn that identifying children's activities in ancient sites can be difficult since small objects and small footprints do not always have simple meanings. Still, the more closely scholars look, the more the quiet presence of children appears. You turn toward the shelter you visited earlier. A child sits at its entrance threading something through a small hole in a shell. Their fingers are clumsy but careful. The shell is pale, polished by water before human hands claimed it. Perhaps it will become decoration, perhaps a charm, perhaps a sign of belonging, or perhaps the child simply likes it because it is smooth and catches the light. An older person leans beside them, offering guidance with small gestures. Not a lecture, not a grand speech about the symbolic importance of personal ornamentation in early human society, which would probably make everyone tired, including the shell. Just a touch to reposition the shell, a nod, a quiet correction. You notice that children here are not hidden away from reality. They see food being prepared, they see tools break, they see elders grow tired, they hear warnings about animals and weather. They learn who is generous, who is impatient, who tells the best stories, who knows where the sweet roots grow. Social knowledge is as important as practical skill. A young child approaches the fire and stops just outside the safe distance. Someone nearby clicks their tongue softly. The child steps back. Fire is warmth, light cooking, protection and danger. It must be learned with the whole body, the heat on the face, the sharp smell of smoke, the sting when ash blows too close, the rule of staying back. You might imagine these children as fragile in a harsh world, and in many ways they are. But you also see their resilience. They are carried, watched, corrected, teased, fed, and folded into the group. A child belongs not only to one parent, but to a network of eyes and hands. An aunt, an older sibling, a grandparent, a skilled toolmaker, a tired gatherer with just enough energy to pull someone away from a puddle. The camp sounds different when you listen for youth. There are small questions, though you do not understand the words. There are bursts of laughter quickly softened by adult glances. There is the thump of running feet, the scrape of practice tools, the whisper of children trying and failing to be quiet. The afternoon approaches gently. Warmth gathers in the open spaces. Some of the youngest children begin to slow their earlier energy, fading into heavy eyelids and soft-leaning bodies. One falls asleep against a folded hide near the shelter entrance, mouth slightly open, hand still closed around a little stone. You look at that stone and wonder whether it is treasured. Maybe it has a shape the child likes. Maybe it was given by someone older. Maybe it is just a rock and future scholars would be wise not to overdo it. Still, in this moment, it matters to the small hand holding it. The hidden era is often imagined through adults because adults made the tools, hunted the animals, crossed the distances and left bones large enough to study. But no human world is complete without children. They are the reason knowledge must be repeated. They are the reason stories survive beyond one voice. They are the reason a group thinks not only of tonight's fire, but of many seasons ahead. The child near the shelter sighs in sleep. The fire crackles softly. A bird calls from the trees, then another answers. You feel the warmth of the day on your arms, and the coolness of the shaded earth beneath you. Around you the camp continues its quiet work, and within that work childhood unfolds. Not separate, not simple, not silent after all. Just lightly marked like footprints in damp soil before the sun dries them away. The afternoon settles into a softer warmth, the kind that makes shadows stretch and movement slow just slightly. You notice people drifting toward the edges of the camp again, but this time their focus is different. Less about gathering food, more about tending to the quiet necessary work of staying comfortable. Clothing. It is easy to overlook, especially in a world where modern fabrics appear with a quick purchase and very little thought. But here what covers the body is the result of time skill and careful attention. You glance down at your own arms and imagine what it feels like to wear something made entirely by hand, shaped without machines, stitched without metal needles, softened by use rather than chemicals. Near the fire, a hide that was scraped earlier now hangs loosely over a wooden frame. It has begun to dry its surface lighter in colour, smoother where tools have passed over it again and again. A woman sits beside it, working the material between her hands, pulling, stretching, softening. The motion is steady, almost rhythmic. It is not hurried because it cannot be hurried. The hide resists at first, then it yields just a little. You step closer and feel the air near the hide. It carries a faint warmth from the sun, and the fire mixed with the lingering scent of the animal it once belonged to. It is not unpleasant, just honest. The kind of smell that reminds you that everything here has a story that began long before it reached human hands. In early human life, clothing served far more than appearance. It protected against cold sun, wind, insects, and rough terrain. It allowed people to move into new climates and survive where bare skin alone would struggle. Evidence from genetic studies and archaeological findings suggests that tailored clothing may have existed tens of thousands of years ago, though most of it has disappeared because organic materials break down over time. You watch as the woman picks up a tool made from bone, narrow and pointed. She presses it carefully through the edge of the hide, creating small holes. Nearby, a length of sinew has been prepared, split into fine strands and twisted for strength. She threads it through the holes, pulling it tight, joining two pieces of hide together. The motion is precise: push, pull, tighten, repeat. Not far away, another person works with plant fibres, twisting them between fingers and palm to form a cord. The fibres are slightly rough but flexible. You can hear the faint rasp as they slide against skin. Slowly the cord grows longer. It will be used for binding, tying, fastening, perhaps even weaving. You realise that clothing here is not a single item, it is a system. Layers, fastenings, repairs, adjustments, a wrap for warmth, a binding for tools, a sling for carrying, a cover for sleeping. Each piece connects to another. An interesting observation from preserved sites and experimental studies is that early humans likely used a wide range of materials for clothing, including animal hides, fur bark, fibres, grasses, and possibly early forms of woven textiles. In colder regions, fur worn with the hair facing inward could trap heat effectively, while in warmer climates, lighter coverings might protect from sun and insects. You notice a child watching closely, fingers brushing the edge of a finished piece. The texture is soft but uneven. The child presses it against their cheek, then smiles faintly. There is comfort in that touch. Warmth, protection, familiarity. The adult notices and gently adjusts the child's grip, showing how to hold the material without stretching it too far. Again, the lesson is quiet. No formal instruction, just shared movement. You walk a little farther and find a bundle of thin strips laid out to dry. They might become ties, belts, or stitching material. Some are twisted, others are left flat. The variety suggests experimentation, adaptation, preference. What works best today might change tomorrow. There is also decoration. You almost miss it at first. A string of small shells lies beside a folded hide. Each shell has been pierced carefully. The edges are smooth from handling. When lifted, they make a faint clicking sound as they touch. Not loud, just enough to be noticed if you're listening closely. Adornment may seem like a luxury, but it appears early in human history. Small beads, shells, pigments, and markings suggest that people cared about appearance, identity, and expression long before written records. Some researchers think these items may have signalled group membership status or personal meaning. Others suggest they were simply enjoyed for their beauty. Perhaps both are true. You imagine how these shells would look against the hide, catching light as someone moves. A small detail easily lost to time, yet meaningful in the moment it was worn. Not all questions about early clothing have clear answers. Some researchers try to reconstruct garments based on tool marks, wear patterns, and rare preserved fragments, while others point out how much must be missing. Without fabric or intact garments, much of this world remains an informed guess shaped by comparison with later cultures and experimental work. Still, the evidence that remains suggests care, skill, and intention. You return to the fire where a piece of hide has now been shaped into something more recognizable. It drapes over shoulders, secured with a tie at one side. The fit is simple but effective. It allows movement while keeping warmth close. The edges are uneven but strong. A person adjusts it, pulling it tighter as a breeze passes through the camp. The wind carries a hint of cooler air, reminding you that even in this mild afternoon temperature, shifts matter. Clothing here is not about fashion in the modern sense. There are no changing trends, no seasonal collections, no sudden urge to reinvent your entire wardrobe because a magazine suggested it. Instead, there is continuity, repair, adaptation, the quiet satisfaction of something that works. You sit for a moment and imagine the feel of wearing such clothing through a full day, the weight on your shoulders, the warmth building as you move, the slight stiffness when it is new softening over time, the way it holds the scent of smoke of the forest of the person who wears it. It becomes part of the body. Nearby, someone folds a finished piece and places it inside a shelter. Another gathers scraps perhaps to be reused. Nothing is wasted without reason. Materials are too valuable, effort too significant. As the sun begins to lower, the light turns warmer again, touching the hides with a golden glow. Shadows lengthen across the ground. The work slows, not because it is done, but because the day is gently shifting toward evening. You notice how different this feels from modern life. There is no sudden end to work marked by a clock, no rush to finish before a deadline. Instead, tasks blend into one another, guided by light, weather, and need. The camp breathes. You rest your hands on your knees and feel the texture of the ground beneath you. Small stones press lightly into your skin. The air cools just enough to make the warmth of the fire more inviting again. Around you, people continue their quiet work, shaping the materials that stand between body and world. Most of it will vanish. The fibres, the hides, the cords, the careful stitches, gone long before anyone tries to imagine this moment. But for now it is all here, held in hands, worn on skin, shared between people, a kind of knowledge that does not need to last forever to matter deeply while it exists. Evening begins as a soft change in the air. The sun has not fully gone, but the forest has started to darken at its roots. Shadows gather beneath the trees. The river beyond the camp turns from silver to grey, and the insects grow louder, filling the spaces between human voices with a thin, steady music. You sit near the fire again, close enough to feel warmth on your hands. The people around you are not silent now. They speak, though you cannot understand the words. Their voices rise and fall, gently moving through the camp like smoke. A low murmur here, a brief laugh there, a sharp sound from someone correcting a child, a softer answer from someone tired. Language surrounds you, yet remains just out of reach. To step into this hidden era is to step into one of the most delicate mysteries of human life. Speech leaves no fossil. A word vanishes the instant it is spoken unless someone remembers it and says it again. Bone can survive. Stone can survive. A footprint may survive in lucky mud. But the first joke, the first lullaby, the first warning whispered beside a river, all of that disappears into air. Still, the people here are clearly communicating. You see it before you hear it. A hand lifts toward the trees and two others turn their heads. A child is called back with only a sound and a look. Someone points toward the river path, then taps a bundle of tools. Meaning passes quickly, smoothly, almost invisibly. Human language, as far as researchers can tell, was likely already highly developed by the time Homo sapiens spread widely across Africa and beyond. The exact timing remains uncertain, because speech depends on anatomy, brain development, social life and culture, all tangled together in ways that do not preserve neatly. Ancient skulls and genetic clues can suggest possibilities, but they cannot repeat a sentence for us. You listen to a conversation near the fire. One person gestures with both hands, shaping space in the air. Another nods, then interrupts with a soft burst of words. The first person leans back, smiling. Whatever has been said, it seems familiar perhaps, mildly amusing, perhaps a little unfair to someone absent. Some parts of human behaviour are deeply ancient. Complaining about someone who is not currently present may be one of them. The fire cracks. Sparks drift upward. The smell of smoke deepens as fresh wood is added, resinous and sharp. A baby fusses, then quiets, as an older person begins to hum. The melody is simple, only a few tones repeated slowly. It does not need words to work. The baby's breathing steadies. You feel the sound in your chest. Music and speech may have shared deep roots in rhythm, breath, memory, and social bonding. No one can say exactly how the earliest human languages sounded. Some researchers imagine complex spoken systems very early in our species' story. Others are more cautious, suggesting language may have expanded gradually as social groups, symbolic behaviour, and teaching became more intricate. What everyone agrees on is this: people needed to share information. Where water could be found, which plants were dangerous, how to make a tool, who was kin, where the herd had moved, what happened yesterday, what might happen tomorrow. A group that can pass knowledge through sound has a powerful advantage. It can store experience beyond one body. You turn your attention to two adults sitting beside a child. One holds a stone tool and speaks slowly while demonstrating emotion. The child watches, then tries to copy. The adult corrects not by taking over, but by making a smaller gesture, a subtle adjustment of wrist and angle. A word is repeated. The child repeats it too, or something like it. The sound may name the tool, or the action, or the mistake. You cannot know, but the teaching is unmistakable. There is a strange tenderness in not understanding the language. You hear tone more clearly, warmth, patience, irritation, humour, warning, affection. The emotional music of speech comes through even when meaning does not. You realise how much communication lives outside vocabulary. A lesser-known clue about prehistoric communication comes from the body itself. The hyoid bone, a small bone in the throat involved in speech, has been studied in ancient humans and Neanderthals. Some finds suggest that Neanderthals may have had vocal anatomy capable of complex speech, though anatomy alone cannot prove language as we know it. The throat can offer hints, but not transcripts. Across the fire, someone begins telling what feels like a story. You know it by the change in attention. People shift closer. Children turn their faces toward the speaker. The speaker's hands move in wider patterns, now painting the air. A sweeping gesture toward the sky. A quick motion like running. A pause. A soft sound that makes several listeners smile. The story may be practical. It may be about an animal seen near the ridge, a storm remembered from another season, a mistake made by someone young and overconfident. Or it may be something stranger, a tale about how the river came to bend, why the stars return, why a certain bird cries at dusk. No one writes it down. No one needs to. The story lives by being carried. You sit with them and feel the night thicken around the firelight. The shelter walls glow faintly. The edges of tools shine and fade as people move. Outside the circle, the forest becomes a dark mass of trunks and leaves. Something calls in the distance, a long animal sound, then silence. The speaker lowers their voice. Everyone listens more closely. This is not dramatic in a sharp way. It is gentle, intimate, almost drowsy. The kind of storytelling meant for people who have worked all day and are now letting the fire hold their attention. You think of modern life full of messages, recordings, subtitles, voice notes, endless little pings asking for attention. Here speech is immediate and fragile. If you miss it, it is gone. If no one remembers it, it fades. But perhaps that makes listening more careful. The fire pops softly and a child laughs at the wrong moment. Several adults smile. The storyteller pauses with exaggerated patience, and the child presses both hands over their mouth, delighted and embarrassed. The rhythm resumes. There is still disagreement about when symbolic language became fully modern. Cave art, personal ornaments, long-distance exchange, and complex tools all suggest minds capable of shared meaning. Yet these signs appear unevenly across time and place. Some specialists see sudden bursts of symbolic behaviour. Others see older, slower developments hidden by poor preservation. The evidence is like a voice heard through a wall, clear enough to know someone is speaking, but not clear enough to catch every word. You look around the fire and imagine how many languages rose and vanished before writing began. Not dozens, not hundreds, perhaps thousands. Entire worlds of names, jokes, prayers, insults, songs, and bedtime warnings lost without a trace. A person near you sees something softly and touches the shell ornament at their neck. Another answers and touches their own. A shared sign, a memory, a bond. Words move between them like small lights. The night grows cooler. Someone pulls a hide closer around their shoulders. The storyteller's voice slows. The children lean against adults. The baby sleeps. Even the insects seem to soften at the edges. You do not know the words, but you understand the scene. People gathered against darkness. Breath warmed by fire. Meaning passed from one mind to another. A world held together by sound. And when the final words of the story fade, nothing visible remains in the air. Yet everyone has changed a little by hearing it. The story fades into a comfortable hush, and the fire becomes the centre of everything again. You watch it breathe in the darkness. The flames rise, lean, shrink, and rise once more bright at the base, and gold along the edges. Beneath them embers glow red and orange, pulsing slowly beneath a skin of ash. Every so often a branch settles with a soft crack, sending a few sparks upward into the night. The camp is tightened around the warmth. People sit closer now, wrapped in hides and woven coverings, knees drawn in shoulders, rounded against the cooling air. The darkness beyond the fire seems larger than before, not frightening exactly, but deep. It presses gently at the edges of the light. You feel the difference immediately. Where the fire reaches there is warmth, visibility, scent, sound, and company. Beyond it there is uncertainty. The fire does not erase the night, but it gives the night a boundary. Long before lamps, hearths, ovens, or neatly arranged fireplaces, humans learned to use fire as one of the great companions of survival. Evidence for controlled fire use reaches far back into human prehistory, though exactly when it became regular and widespread is still difficult to pin down. Some sites suggest very early use by human ancestors, while clearer repeated hearths become easier to identify later. Fire-like language leaves traces, but not always tidy ones. You sit close enough now that your palms warm quickly when you hold them toward the flames. Your back remains cool. That contrast feels ancient. Front warmed by fire, spine touched by night. A person beside you shifts and pulls a hide over their lap. The hide smells faintly of smoke from many evenings, just like this one. Smoke moves through the camp in slow ribbons. Sometimes it climbs cleanly. Sometimes it turns and wanders into someone's face because smoke has always had a small talent for choosing victims. A child coughs lightly, then scoots to a better place. An adult smiles without looking over. The practical gift of fire are everywhere. It cooks roots until they soften. It roasts meat and fish. It hardens wooden digging sticks and spear tips. It warms bodies through cold nights. It keeps some animals at a distance. It makes darkness usable, extending work and conversation beyond sunset. But fire is not only useful, it is social. You see that now in the way people face it together. The flames draw eyes. They slow the hands. They create a shared circle. Earlier language moved through the camp in many directions. Now voices gather around the hearth. A quiet comment, a soft laugh, a sleepy correction. The fire gives the group a centre that can be seen, felt and smelled. One often missed detail is that firelight changes how the world looks. Faces flicker, shadows move. Painted surfaces, shells, tool edges and eyes all catch and release brightness. In caves, firelight may have made images seem to shift along uneven walls. Even here in the open camp, the flames animate everything. A hanging hide seems to breathe. A branch becomes an arm. A stone looks like a crouched animal, until you blink and remember it is only stone behaving dramatically. People tend the fire carefully. A young adult uses a stick to nudge coals inward. Another adds fuel not too much at once. Dry twigs catch quickly, but larger pieces keep warmth through the night. The knowledge is practical and exact. Which wood burns fast? Which smokes heavily? Which produces lasting coals? Which must be dried first? You think of modern heating, quiet and hidden inside walls controlled by a small glowing number on a thermostat. Here warmth is visible labour. Someone must gather wood. Someone must protect embers from rain. Someone must notice when the fire lowers. Comfort has a smell, a colour and a maintenance schedule. A cooking bundle is open near the edge of the hearth. Steam rises as leaves are pulled aside. The scent is rich and earthy. Cooked roots, perhaps, or small portions of meat wrapped with herbs. People eat slowly now, less from hunger than from the calm pleasure of warmth and food after daylight work. Fire changes food. It breaks down tough fibres. It makes some plants safer to eat. It releases new smells and textures. Many researchers connect cooking with major changes in human evolution, because cooked food can be easier to chew and digest. Yet there is still discussion over exactly when cooking became a daily habit, and how much it shaped bodies, brains, and social life over time. You take in the quiet scene. A child leans against an elder chewing sleepily. Someone sharpens a tool in the low light more by feel than sight. Another person twists cord with slow fingers, the movement almost automatic. Firelight rests on their knuckles, then slips away. The night beyond the flames is alive with small sounds, insects, distant calls, grass moving under a light breeze. Somewhere near the river, water touches stones again and again. The camp listens without seeming tense. The fire provides confidence, though not carelessness. A person rises and walks to the edge of the light, holding a burning branch. The flame bends in the air as they move. They pause, look into the dark, then return. Perhaps they heard something. Perhaps they only checked. The branch is placed back among the coals where it settles with a hiss. You notice that everyone understands fire as both helper and danger. Children are watched closely. Sparks are brushed away. Fuel is placed with care. A fire that escapes the hearth can threaten the camp, the shelter, the forest. Respect is not optional. There is an old intimacy in this. Humans did not simply use fire once and move on. They lived with it, protected it, fed it, carried embers from place to place, built routines around it. In some cold regions, keeping fire alive may have meant the difference between comfort and suffering, between cooked food and raw scarcity, between light and a long, difficult dark. The flames lower for a while and the embers become more beautiful. They glow beneath ash like hidden jewels. Someone uses a tool to open the heart of the fire, exposing brighter coals. Warmth spills outward. A few faces lift toward it. You feel your own breathing slow. The camp is not asleep, but it's moving towards sleep. Voices thin, movements become smaller. A person wraps leftover food and sets it aside. Another checks the shelter covering. Someone near the fire begins to hum the same simple melody you heard earlier, so soft it is almost part of the smoke. This is the kind of evidence that does not survive. The exact song, the arrangement of bodies around the heat, the way one person always sat with their left side toward the flames, the little family habits, the preferred stories, the shared jokes about who snores. Ash may remain, charcoal may remain, burned bone may remain. Archaeologists may find a hearth and measure it, date it, map it, analyse its contents. They may learn a great deal, but they will not hear the sleepy laughter that once rose above it. You watch the fire settle lower and you understand why humans return to this circle again and again. It is not merely a tool. It is evening made visible. It is safety with a flickering edge. It is the place where the day becomes memory. Around you the hidden era glows softly, almost preserved in light. And then as the night deepens, the fire keeps watch. The fire burns lower through the night, settling into a quiet bed of glowing coals. Around you, bodies shift, curl and rest. Some sleep deeply. Others drift in and out, waking briefly to adjust a covering, or listen to a distant sound before sinking back into stillness. You remain awake just a little longer. There is something about this hour that feels suspended, as though time itself is moving more slowly. The air has cooled and you pull a hide closer around your shoulders. It carries warmth from earlier, along with a faint scent of smoke and earth. Beyond the camp, the darkness feels wide but not empty. It hums with small life. Insects, distant animals, the quiet movement of wind through leaves. Then gradually the sky begins to change. At first it is barely noticeable, a soft thinning of darkness near the horizon. The stars closest to that edge fade just slightly, as if stepping back to make room. You sit up and watch as the night slowly releases its hold. By the time the first grey light spreads across the land, a few people are already awake. There is no alarm, no sudden start, just a gentle returning to movement. A hand brushes ash from the fire. Another person stretches joints stiff from sleep. Someone steps quietly away from the camp, perhaps toward the river, perhaps simply to greet the morning in silence. You rise and follow. The ground feels cool beneath your feet, damp with night air. Each step presses lightly into soil that has not yet warmed. You move past the shelters, past the tools resting where they were left, and toward the open land beyond the trees. This is where the paths begin, not paths marked with stones or cleared with intention, but routes remembered through repetition. You notice how certain directions feel easier to walk. The ground dips slightly here, rises gently there. Branches are fewer along one line than another. These small advantages become routes over time, passed from memory to memory. Across vast stretches of prehistory, people moved constantly. Not wandering without purpose, but following patterns shaped by seasons, animals, plants, and water. Evidence from stone tools, fossil remains, and genetic study shows that early humans spread across continents over tens of thousands of years, adapting to environments that ranged from open grasslands to dense forests to icy plains. You step onto a narrow track where the soil is slightly more compacted. Others have walked here, not once but many times, perhaps for years, perhaps for generations. The path curves gently toward higher ground. As you follow it, the camp behind you fades into the distance, its smoke blending into the morning air. Ahead, the land opens into a wide stretch of grass silver with dew. The sun has not yet risen fully, but its light is beginning to touch the tops of distant hills. You pause for a moment and look back. From here, the camp is almost invisible. The shelters blend into the earth. The fire is hidden. The people are simply part of the landscape. It reminds you how easily entire lives can pass without leaving clear marks behind. You continue forward. The grass brushes against your legs, leaving faint streaks of moisture on your skin. Each step produces a soft whispering sound. Somewhere ahead, a bird lifts suddenly into the air, wings beating once, twice, then gliding away. You notice tracks in the ground. Not fresh like those near the river, but still visible. Faint impressions where hooves once pressed. A line where something dragged. Smaller marks that might belong to a human foot, though time has softened their edges. The path carries stories layered and overlapping, though none of them speak clearly anymore. People in this era relied heavily on such pathways. They connected camps to water sources, hunting grounds, gathering areas, and seasonal shelters. Over time, these routes could stretch across vast distances, forming invisible networks across landscapes. You walk along one of these routes now, feeling how it guides your movement without needing signs or markers. Your body begins to follow its curves, naturally adjusting pace and direction without much thought. A person appears ahead of you, moving in the same direction. They carry a long wooden shaft, perhaps a spear or a walking staff. Their steps are steady, unhurried. When they notice you, they give a small nod, then continue. There is no need for explanation. The path itself explains enough. You follow at a distance, noticing how they pause occasionally to look around. Not in fear, but in awareness. The land is red constantly. The position of the sun, the direction of wind, the movement of animals, the sound of distant water. What might seem like empty space is filled with information. A small but revealing detail comes to mind as you walk. In some parts of the world, archaeologists have found evidence of long-distance movement through the distribution of specific stone types. Tools made from a particular kind of rock have been discovered hundreds of kilometers from their original source, suggesting that people either travelled great distances or exchanged materials through networks of groups. Movement, then, was not only local, it could stretch far beyond what the eye could see. You crest a small rise and stop. Before you, the land unfolds in layers, grasslands, patches of trees, a distant line that might mark another river or a change in terrain. The sun finally breaks the horizon, sending a wash of golden light across everything. The dew on the grass catches it, sparkling briefly before fading as the warmth grows. You feel the shift in temperature almost immediately. The coolness of night begins to lift. The day is starting again. There is still uncertainty about how structured these movements were. Some researchers imagine regular seasonal routes, almost like early calendars written across the land. Others suggest that movement was more flexible, responding to immediate conditions rather than fixed patterns. The truth may lie somewhere in between, shaped by both habit and necessity. You take a slow breath and turn back. The path leads you home again, though home is a temporary thing here. A place held for a while, then left behind. The camp will not stay forever. It cannot. The land will change. Resources will shift. The group will move on. But for now, the path returns you to warmth, to people, to the small circle of fire that marks this moment in time. As you walk back, your footprints join the many others that have passed this way. They press into the damp earth, clear for a short while, then softening as the sun rises higher. Soon they will be gone, and the path will remain not as a visible line, but as a memory carried forward step by step. When you return to the camp, the morning has fully opened. Light rests gently across the shelters, the tools, the scattered bundles of gathered food. The fire has been stirred back into a steady flame, and a few people are already at work again, though nothing feels rushed. Your attention shifts almost without meaning to toward a group seated slightly apart from the main circle. Women! They are working, talking softly, moving in ways that feel both ordinary and essential. It is easy, especially from a distance shaped by modern assumptions, to overlook how much of life gathers quietly around them. No grand gestures, no loud announcements, just steady, continuous action. You move closer, careful not to interrupt the rhythm. One woman kneels with a collection of plant stems spread before her. She strips fibres from them with practiced fingers, separating strong threads from the softer outer layers. The fibres catch the light, pale and slightly glossy. She twists them together, rolling them along her thigh, forming a cord that grows longer with each motion. Beside her, another woman sorts through the morning's gathered food. Roots are placed in one pile, seeds in another, berries set carefully aside. Her hands move quickly, but not carelessly. She checks each item, discarding anything spoiled, adjusting the arrangement as if following a pattern only she fully understands. You begin to see how much knowledge is carried here, not written, not declared, but held in memory and practice. Which plants are safe, which are best at this time of year, which must be cooked, which can be stored, which should be left behind so they grow again. In many early human societies, gathering was not a minor task. It provided a significant portion of daily food, often more reliable than hunting. Studies of both ancient remains and recent foraging groups suggest that plant knowledge formed a stable foundation for survival, even when hunting brought larger but less predictable rewards. A child approaches holding a small cluster of leaves. The woman sorting food pauses, looks closely, then shakes her head gently. The child watches as she selects one leaf and points to its shape, then to another nearby plant. The difference is subtle but important. The child nods slowly, then places the leaves aside. A lesson passed without ceremony. You notice another woman seated slightly apart, her posture relaxed but attentive. A younger person sits beside her, speaking quietly, hands moving as they explain something. The older woman listens, then responds with a short series of gestures and words. The younger one nods, more confident now. There is authority here, but it is not loud. It does not need to be. It becomes clear that experience shapes influence in this space. Those who remember more, who have seen more seasons, who know where water dries first, or where certain plants return each year, carry a quiet weight in decisions. Their voices guide movement even if no one formally declares them leaders. A detail often overlooked in older interpretations of prehistory is how much early research focused on hunting, especially large game, while giving less attention to gathering food preparation and daily maintenance. More recent approaches have shifted that view, recognizing that survival depended on a wide range of tasks, many of which were carried out in ways that leave little visible trace. You watch as a woman adjusts a child's clothing, tightening a cord at the shoulder. The child fidgets, then settles. Another woman laughs softly at something you cannot hear, and the sound spreads briefly through the group before fading again into quiet conversation. The work continues. Cord is twisted. Food is sorted, a tool is repaired, a bundle is tied. None of it feels dramatic, yet everything matters. Without these actions, the group does not eat, does not stay warm, does not move efficiently, does not endure. You notice a small container made from woven fibers. It holds a mixture of crushed plant material, perhaps for food, perhaps for another purpose. The weaving is tight, careful, flexible. You imagine how long it took to learn that pattern, how many attempts failed before it held together. The container will not last. The fibers will break down, returning to the soil, but for now it holds its shape, serving its purpose perfectly. There is still uncertainty in how researchers interpret roles in early human groups. Some earlier models divided labour sharply, assigning hunting to men and gathering to women in strict ways. More recent evidence suggests a more flexible system, with variation across regions and groups. In some contexts, women may have participated in hunting. In others, tasks may have shifted based on need, skill, and circumstance, rather than fixed categories. The reality, like much of this era, resists simple labels. You sit nearby, listening to the soft rhythm of work. The twisting of fibers makes a faint brushing sound. Seeds shift gently in their pile. A stone tool taps lightly as it is adjusted. Voices rise and fall, calm and steady. There is also care here. A woman reaches to brush dirt from a child's cheek. Another checks a small cut on someone's hand, pressing it gently, then wrapping it with a strip of fibre. Someone passes a portion of food to another without comment. These gestures are small, but they weave the group together as surely as any cord. You begin to understand that survival is not only about finding food or making tools, it is about maintaining relationships, trust, cooperation, shared effort. A group cannot move together without these things. The sun climbs higher, warming the ground. The shade near the shelters becomes more inviting. Some of the women shift their positions, moving their work into cooler spaces. The patterns of the day adjust naturally, following light and heat rather than fixed schedules. You notice how often people glance at one another. Quick looks, small signals. Awareness is constant, not tense but present. Each person moves within a web of attention, always aware of where others are, what they are doing, what they might need. The hidden era is often imagined as harsh and isolated, but what you see here is deeply social. No one exists alone. Every action connects to another. A young girl finishes twisting a short length of cord and holds it up, examining it with pride. It is uneven, slightly loose in places, but strong enough to hold. The woman beside her nods a small acknowledgement. The girl smiles, then carefully places it with the others. A beginning. You rest your hands on the ground and feel the warmth building beneath your palms. The day is settling into its middle hours. The energy of morning has softened into steady activity. Around you, life continues in quiet, essential ways. Work that does not announce itself. Knowledge that does not need to be written down. Care that does not ask for recognition. Most of it will leave no clear trace. But here now it is unmistakably present. And as you sit among them, you begin to see that this overlooked work is not a background detail of history. It is the structure that holds everything else in place. By midday, the camp feels both busy and strangely peaceful. The sun has climbed high enough to brighten the open ground between the shelters, yet the shade beneath the trees remains cool and inviting. Smoke rises in slow pale threads from the hearth. A few people sit near it working quietly. Others have moved outward, following small tusks toward the river, the forest, or the low, grassy rise beyond the camp. You stand for a moment and look around, trying to understand the shape of the place. It is not a village. Not exactly. Nothing here feels fixed enough for that word. There are no permanent walls, no fields, no heavy storage buildings, no paths cut deeply into the earth. And yet it is not random either. The shelters face certain directions. Tools are kept in certain places. Food is processed near the fire. Sleeping spaces sit slightly apart from work areas. Children move through familiar boundaries. This is a camp small and temporary but full of order. You walk slowly through it, noticing the arrangement. One shelter is close to the hearth, another tucked nearer the trees. A patch of ground holds flakes of stone from tool-making, kept slightly away from where people sit with bare feet. That seems sensible. Even deep prehistory had the basic wisdom of not scattering sharp little surprises where everyone walks. The group itself is not large, perhaps a few families, perhaps kin joined with others through marriage-friendship exchange or shared memory. In many foraging societies, small mobile groups could gather separate and gather again, depending on season and resources. Life was not always lived in one fixed band forever. Social worlds could stretch beyond the camp, you see. This matters because a small camp is only part of a larger human map. You watch as two people prepare bundles near the edge of the clearing. They sort tools, wrap food, check cords, and test the weight of what can be carried. Perhaps they are going out for the afternoon. Perhaps they are preparing for a move in the next few days. The camp does not feel anxious, but it does feel ready. Nothing is too heavy without reason. A person lifts a hide covering and shakes it gently. Dust rises in the sunlight, then drifts away. Another folds a mat made from reeds or grass, pressing it tightly before tying it with cord. The mat is flexible, worn smooth in places. It might be bedding, seating, wrapping, or all of those at different times. Its usefulness is obvious. Its chance of surviving thousands of years is almost insulting. You step toward a shelter and notice how lightly it sits on the earth. The branches can be pulled free, the coverings can be rolled, the stones weighing the edges can be left behind or reused. A home like this is not abandoned dramatically. It is simply unmade. That's one reason these camps often become difficult for future archaeologists to see. A brief stay may leave only a scatter of stone flakes, a few bones traces of ash, or darker soil where people lived. If the group moves often and cleans or reuses materials, the evidence becomes even thinner. Whole days of living may shrink into a few fragments. You sit near a patch of shade where several adults are sharing food. There is no formal table, but there is a pattern of offering. A piece is passed, a child receives a portion, an older person is given something soft. The movements are casual but not careless. Everyone seems to understand the unspoken rules. In a tiny camp, social balance matters. Too much selfishness and trust weakens. Too much conflict and movement becomes difficult. No one can simply close a bedroom door, put on headphones, and pretend the rest of the group has become a vague household rumour. Space is shared. Weather is shared. Hunger is shared. Irritation is probably shared as well, though politely enough most of the time. A quiet detail from studies of mobile hunter-gatherer camps is that activity areas often reveal patterns of cooperation. Places for tool-making, cooking hide, working and resting may overlap but not randomly. Even without permanent architecture, people organize space around tasks, relationships, safety and comfort. You notice one person sitting alone for a while near the edge of the camp. Not excluded, just apart. They repair a tool with slow focus, wrapping cord tightly around a handle. Now and then someone passes by and speaks. The person answers briefly, then returns to work. Even solitude here is held within the group's awareness. The afternoon air warms. A faint smell of drying grass rises from the ground. Flies buzz near food scraps until someone brushes them away with a leafy branch. A baby sleeps beneath a shade covering one small hand open beside their face. Nearby, 2 children build a miniature shelter from twigs, copying the larger structures with serious concentration. One insists on placing a stone at the entrance, the other removes it. The first replaces it. Architecture, it seems, has always inspired disagreement. You move toward the outer edge of the camp and look outward. Beyond the clearing, the world is immense. Grassland rolls toward the horizon. Trees cluster near water. Hills rise in the distance, blue with haze. This camp is a tiny point in a vast landscape, yet it is connected to everything around it. The river provides water and tracks. The forest provides plants, fuel, fibre, and shade. The open ground may reveal animal movement. The hills may hold stone. A camp is not separate from nature. It is a temporary knot tied within it. There's still no single answer to how long groups like this stayed in one place. In some environments, people may have returned to favoured locations again and again, building up layers of evidence over many seasons. In others, a camp might last only a few nights before the group moved on. Climate, food availability, group size, and cultural preference all played a part. The record gives clues, but rarely a complete schedule. You return toward the hearth as a small breeze moves through the clearing. The smoke bends, then straightens. Someone adds fuel. Someone else carries water in a flexible container, its surface darkened from use. The water sloshes softly. You think about how fragile this entire place is. A storm could scatter it. A season of plant growth could hide it. Animals could disturb it. Roots could break through it. Time could erase it almost completely. And still, while it exists, it is everything. It is where children learn which faces mean safety. It is where tools are made and repaired. It is where food is shared. Wounds are checked. Stories are told and decisions are shaped by many small conversations. It is where people return after walking into uncertainty. The hidden era was not made of one grand settlement after another. Much of it was made of places like this. Tiny camps under enormous skies. Brief homes beside water. Fire circles in open land. Shelters tucked against wind. Human warmth gathered in small numbers against a world both generous and demanding. As the day leans gently toward afternoon, the camp continues its ordinary music. Stone taps, chord twists, children murmur, fire breathes, leaves rustle. Someone laughs softly near the shelter, and the sound travels only a short distance before fading into the warm air. You sit down again near the hearth and let the smallness of the camp settle around you. It is small, yes, but small does not mean unimportant. A candle is small in a dark room. A footprint is small in mud. A whispered warning is small beside a storm. And yet each can change what happens next. By late afternoon the air changes again. A faint salt smell reaches you before you understand where it comes from. It slips through the trees and over the grassland, sharp and clean, different from river mud, different from smoke, different from the warm scent of hides drying near the shelters. You turn toward it, and the group ahead of you does the same. The sea is somewhere beyond the low hills. You follow at an easy pace, leaving the camp behind with 2 adults and an older child who carries a small bundle against their chest. The path is narrow at first, winding through scrub and low branches. Dry leaves crackle softly underfoot. The sun sits lower now, touching the landscape with amber light. Insects drift above the grasses, briefly shining, then disappearing. The ground begins to slope downward. Soon the trees thin and the world opens. Before you lies a broad coastal plain, and beyond it the sea. It is not the coastline you would find on a modern map. During colder periods of the Ice Age, so much water was locked in glaciers that sea levels were far lower than they are today. Vast stretches of land now drowned beneath oceans were once open, shore marsh beach, river mouth and walking ground. People may have lived, gathered, travelled and camped across those lost edges of the world. You stand still listening. The sea moves in long, slow breaths. Waves fold over sand and stones with a soft rushing sound, then pull back with a hiss. The air tastes faintly of salt. Gulls or birds much like them wheel above the water, crying into the wind. The light on the surface trembles in silver strips. The child beside you runs a few steps ahead, then stops at a warning sound from the adults. The shore is generous, but not harmless. Tides move. Rocks are slippery. Shells cut bare skin. Pools hide sharp spines, quick claws and small surprises that do not care about your peaceful historical immersion. You walk down toward the beach. The sand is cool where the tide has touched it warmer farther up. It presses under your feet, holding your shape clearly for a few moments. Footprints appear behind the people ahead of you, dark and wet. Each one feels temporary, already waiting to be softened by wind or water. At the edge of a tide pool, one adult crouches. Their hand moves carefully among rocks slick with green growth. They lift a shellfish and twist it free. Another follows, then another. The shells click together as they are placed into a woven container. The work is slow but steady. Food along the coast can be wonderfully reliable when you know where and when to look. Shellfish, fish, seaweed, birds, eggs, seals. In some regions, stranded animals, edible coastal plants and freshwater from nearby streams could all support human life. Coastal environments may have offered rich resources for early people moving through unfamiliar landscapes, yet much of this evidence is now underwater. That is the strange quietness of ancient coasts. If people camped near shorelines during low sea levels, many of those camps were later swallowed as ice melted and oceans rose. Hearths, tools, footprint shell piles, wooden objects, and sleeping places may now rest beneath meters of water, sand, and silt. Some are gone entirely. Others remain hidden where excavation becomes difficult, expensive, and sometimes impossible. You watch the waves and imagine the land continuing far beyond the present shore. Marsh grasses, channels, dunes, camps near freshwater lagoons. Fires glowing at dusk where now there is only water. The hidden era becomes even more hidden here. One small discovery from places around the world makes the scene feel more vivid. Archaeologists have found ancient shell middens, piles of discarded shells, left by repeated meals at coastal sites in Africa, Europe, Australia, and the Americas. Some are enormous, built up over generations. Others are modest. Either way, they show that shorelines were not empty margins. They were larders, meeting places, and familiar seasonal stops. The adults gather shellfish while the child searches for smooth stones. The stones are wet and cold-striped with white lines. One is placed carefully into the child's pouch, apparently too excellent to leave behind. You respect the decision. Some rocks simply have presence. A little farther along the shore, driftwood lies in pale, tangled shapes. Some pieces are smooth from water. Others are cracked and dry enough for fuel. One adult lifts a piece and tests its weight. Perhaps it will burn later. Perhaps it will become a handle, a digging stick, a frame, a tool. The sea does not only provide food, it delivers materials from elsewhere carried by currents like gifts from an absent neighbour. The wind moves against your face cool and steady. It pulls at hair clothing loose fibres. The smell of salt grows stronger as you move nearer the waves. Foam gathers around stones bright for a moment, before fading into clear water. You notice a line of shells higher on the beach marking an earlier tide. Someone studies it, then glances at the sky and water. Tides are a kind of clock, but not a simple one. They rise and fall with the moon, wind, coastline, and season. A group that understands them can gather safely and efficiently. A group that misjudges them may be forced back quickly, or trapped in a dangerous place. The question of coastal travel remains one of the most intriguing parts of early human movement. Many researchers think ancient shorelines may have helped people spread into new regions, because coasts offered food and a route that was easier to follow than dense inland terrain. Others point out that direct evidence is limited precisely because old shorelines are submerged. The idea is compelling, but the sea keeps many of its receipts. You continue walking along the waterline. The adults pause near a cluster of rocks where small pools reflect the sky. One uses a simple tool to pry loose another shellfish. The other gathers seaweed into a bundle, perhaps for food, wrapping, bedding, or another use. The wet strands feel slick and cool. When lifted, they shine dark green and brown, dripping steadily back into the pool. A crab darts sideways beneath a stone, performing its small ancient comedy of panic and suspicion. The child laughs, then tries to imitate the motion, sidestepping awkwardly, until one adult smiles and shakes their head. The sun lowers toward the horizon. Light spreads across the sea in a path so bright it almost hurts to look at. The waves become gold at their edges. Birds settle along distant rocks. The temperature falls a little, and you become aware of the wind slipping beneath your covering. The group begins to turn back. The container is heavier now, filled with shells and damp sea plants. Driftwood is carried under one arm. The child keeps one hand on their pouch, guarding the precious stone from absolutely no one. As you climb away from the shore, you look back. The tide is already changing the beach. Prints soften, water enters shallow marks. Foam slides over where feet passed only moments ago. The sea is beautiful, but it is a poor archivist. It takes evidence, rearranges it, buries it, breaks it, or hides it beneath blue distance. And still, along ancient coasts, people lived entire chapters of the human story. They gathered at low tide. They watched storms from shelter. They followed beaches toward lands unknown. They slept to the sound of waves that no record now remembers. You carry the salt smell with you as the camp smoke appears faintly ahead. Behind you, the sea continues breathing in the evening light, covering and uncovering the edge of the world. The salt smell fades as you return inland, replaced slowly by smoke, grass, damp earth, and the familiar warmth of the camp. The sky has deepened into evening blue. The first stars are beginning to appear faint at first, then clearer as the light drains from the west. The group arrives with shells, seaweed, driftwood, and the child's carefully guarded stone. People near the fire look up. A few come closer to inspect what has been brought back. The shells are placed near the hearth. The seaweed is unwrapped. The driftwood is set aside to dry. Then, as the evening meal begins to take shape, you hear something different. Not speech, not laughter, a rhythm. It starts softly, almost by accident. Someone taps two pieces of wood together near the fire, a slow pattern. Tap, pause, tap, tap, pause. Another person answers by striking a hollow piece of bone or branch against the ground. The sound is deeper, warmer. Soon, a third sound joins, made by hands clapping gently against thighs. The rhythm is not loud, it does not break the calm, it gathers it. You sit near the fire and listen as the sounds settle into one another. The beat is uneven at first, then steadier. Children look up from their food. Adults lean closer. Someone hums low and breathy, following the rhythm rather than leading it. Music in this hidden age would have left only the faintest traces. Sound disappears even faster than shelters clothing or speech. Yet the human body itself is musical. Breath, heartbeat, footsteps, clapping voice. Long before formal instruments could be carved, polished, or decorated, people could create rhythm with hands, stone sticks, and bone. You feel the beat in your chest. It is simple, but it changes the space. The fire seems to flicker in time with it. Shadows move along the shelter coverings. The shells from the coast click softly when someone shifts them in a basket, adding a delicate, accidental note. Near the edge of the circle, an older person lifts a small hollow bone. It has holes along its length carefully placed. When they blow across it, a thin sound rises into the evening, soft, wavering, almost bird-like. It is not polished concert music. It is rougher than that, more fragile and somehow more intimate. Archaeologists have found prehistoric flutes made from bird bone and mammoth ivory in Europe dating back tens of thousands of years. These finds show that music was not a late luxury added after survival became easy. It belonged to deep human life, appearing alongside tools, ornaments, fire, and art. The note trembles, then steadies. You listen as the player tries a short pattern. 3 notes, a pause, another note lower than the first. The melody is small, but everyone hears it. A child smiles, someone hums along. The rhythm continues beneath it, quiet as footsteps on packed earth. A curious detail about bone flutes is that bird bones are naturally hollow, making them useful for instruments. A wing bone from a large bird could become a flute with careful cutting and piercing, so the sky in a way lent its light bones to human breath. That sounds poetic, yes, but also practical, which is often how the ancient world prefers to be understood. You watch the player's fingers cover and uncover holes. The hands are worn, the nails darkened by earthen work. This is not separate from daily life. The same hands that gather fuel, repair clothing, scrape hides, and prepare food can also shape sound. The rhythm grows slightly fuller. Not louder, just more confident. A few people sway where they sit. One child begins to move in a small circle near the fire, stepping carefully, then less carefully, until they nearly trip over their own feet. An adult catches them with one hand and guides them back, smiling. The camp relaxes into it. There is uncertainty, of course, about what prehistoric music meant. It may have helped people bond, soothe children, mark rituals, teach stories, coordinate movement, or simply pass the time after long work. Some researchers emphasize its social power, the way rhythm can make many bodies feel connected. Others focus on symbolic or spiritual meanings that are harder to recover. The instrument survives sometimes. The reasons they mattered are more elusive. Still sitting here, you do not need a perfect explanation to feel the effect. The music makes the camp warmer, not physically, though the fire is doing its best. It warms the space between people. It gives the evening a shared shape. A day of gathering, walking, making, teaching, watching, and worrying begins to loosen. Someone adds shells to the rhythm, now shaking them gently in a small pouch. They make a dry, delicate rattle. Another person taps stones together, producing a sharper click. The sounds layer without becoming chaotic. Each one finds a place. You imagine how many instruments have vanished. Drums made from hide stretched over wood, rattles made from seeds, pipes of reed, strings of shell, clappers of bone, voices layered in harmonies no recording will ever hold. The archaeological record preserves only a few hard fragments, leaving the rest as silence where music once lived. The player lowers the bone flute and begins to hum instead. Others join. The melody moves around the circle, not perfectly but gently. Some voices are strong, some are thin. One is beautifully out of tune, proving that music has always been democratic in the most dangerous way. You smile to yourself. The firelight catches the shell ornaments at someone's neck. They brighten, then dim. A child leans against an elder, eyes half closed, listening. The baby from earlier sleeps through the entire performance, which may be either a compliment or a review. The rhythm slows. Tap, pause, tap, long pause. The night seems to lean closer. For a while no one speaks. The last hum fades. The bone flute rests across the player's knees. Smoke drifts upward and disappears into darkness. You notice that even after the music stops, the camp remains changed. People sit nearer. Their breathing is softened. The children are quieter. The evening feels held together by the memory of sound. Perhaps this is one of the oldest comforts of being human. To take breath and turn it into something shared. To take a hollow bone and make it sing. To tap wood against wood until separate bodies remember one another. You look beyond the fire toward the dark line of the trees. Somewhere out there the river moves. Farther still, the sea breathes over the footprints it has already erased. Above, the stars brighten. Here in the small firelit circle, music has risen and vanished, leaving no object except perhaps one bone with holes, one rattle, one worn piece of wood. But inside the people who heard it, the sound remains a little longer. And that too is evidence, though not the kind the earth can keep. Later that night, after the music has faded and the camp has grown still, you notice movement near the edge of the firelight. A small group is preparing to leave. They do not gather loudly. They do not wake everyone. They move with the calm care of people who know exactly what they're doing. One carries a burning branch wrapped at the end with glowing fibre. Another takes a pouch of pigment. Someone else lifts a stone lamp shallow and darkened by use with a small flame trembling inside it. You rise and follow at a respectful distance. The path leads away from the camp, past the sleeping shelters, past the place where tools were made, past the line where open ground gives itself back to trees. The night air is cool enough to make your skin tighten. Leaves brush softly against your arms. Underfoot, the earth changes from dry grass to packed soil, then to scattered stone. Ahead, a dark opening waits in a low cliff. A cave? Its entrance is not grand. It does not announce itself like a doorway to history. It is simply a shadow in rock breathing cold air into the night. The group pauses there. For a moment no one speaks. The small flame flickers in the draught. Then you step inside. The temperature drops almost immediately. The cave smells of damp stone, old mineral water smoke, and earth that has never seen sunlight. Your footsteps sound different here, softer and larger at the same time, as if the cave is repeating them quietly to itself. The walls shine in places where moisture catches the lamp glow. The group moves slowly, one hand often touching stone for balance. Shadows bend and stretch across uneven surfaces. The flame in the lamp makes the cave seem alive. A bulge in the wall becomes a shoulder. A crack becomes a line of movement. A hollow becomes an eye if you're tired enough or imaginative enough or simply human enough. Deep inside, the group stops. There on the wall you see hands. Not living hands, but shapes left by hands. Dark palms, pale outlines. Fingers spread against stone. Some are large, some are smaller. A few overlap as though different people stood here at different times, placing themselves against the same surface. You step closer and the firelight trembles over them. In many caves across Europe, Asia, Africa, Australia, and the Americas, ancient people made images with pigment charcoal engraving and hand stencils. Some cave art is tens of thousands of years old. It shows animals, signs, human-like figures, abstract marks and hands pressed or sprayed into the rock. These images are among the most evocative traces of prehistoric thought, though they explain themselves only in whispers. Someone beside you opens the pouch of pigment. The material inside is red ochre ground fine. It smells faintly metallic like wet stone and iron-rich earth. The person mixes it with liquid, perhaps water, saliva, fat, or some combination known through practice. The paste darkens. A finger stirs it slowly. A hand is placed against the wall. Another person leans close and blows pigment around it through a hollow tube or directly from the mouth. The red dust spreads in a soft cloud settling around the fingers. When the hand lifts away, its pale shape remains surrounded by colour. The gesture is simple. The result feels enormous. A person was here. A body stood in this cold chamber, breathing smoke and pigment arm-raised palm-touching stone. The mark is not a name, not exactly, but it is presence. It says without words that someone entered the dark and left a trace of themselves behind. One easily missed detail is that many hand stencils are not tucked near cave mouths, where daylight would make the work easy. Some appear deep inside difficult spaces where people needed fire or lamps to see. That means the act of making them required planning fuel, companions, and courage. It was not casual decoration during a pleasant afternoon stroll. You follow the wall farther. Animals appear in the wavering light. A large body curved back, strong legs. Perhaps a bison, horse, deer, or wild cattle, depending on where and when this cave belongs. The lines are confident. Some use the natural shape of the rock, turning bumps and cracks into muscle flank or movement. The artist did not simply cover the wall, they listened to it. The flame shifts and the animal seems to move. You can understand how firelight might transform these images. The cave wall is not flat. Shadows slide across ridges and hollows. A painted animal can appear to breathe when the lamp moves. A line can vanish, then return. The cave itself becomes part of the image. What these paintings meant remains one of the deep unresolved questions of prehistory. Some interpretations connect them to hunting practices, teaching memory storytelling, spiritual experience, identity, or encounters with the unseen. Others warn that one explanation cannot cover every image across thousands of years and many regions. The art may have had many meanings, changing from place to place, group to group, even generation to generation. The people around you do not explain it. They do not need to. They know what they are doing, though you do not. A child older than the little ones at camp, but not yet adult, watches from behind someone's shoulder. Their eyes are wide in the lamp glow. The cave reflects the flame near tiny wet points along the ceiling. The child reaches toward the wall, but stops short, waiting. An adult dips a finger into pigment and draws a short line on a lower patch of stone. The child imitates it carefully. Another lesson, another passing of knowledge. The sound inside the cave is intimate. Breathing. The faint hiss of the lamp. A drop of water falling somewhere deeper in the dark. Soft feet shifting on stone. No wind, no insects, no distant river. The world has narrowed to light rock and mark-making. You notice small dots arranged near one animal's back. Perhaps counting marks, perhaps signs, perhaps something entirely different. It is tempting to translate everything, to demand meaning from every line. Modern minds are very good at wanting labels, but the cave offers no captions and gives presence instead. The red pigment stains the artist's fingers. It gathers under nails and along the creases of skin. When they wipe their hand on a hide, a faint smear remains. For a moment, art is not separate from the body. It is dust breath, wet stone, flame and touch. You look again at the hand shapes. Some researchers have tried to estimate the age, sex or identity of hand stencil makers by measuring finger ratios and palm size, but the results are far from certain. What feels more secure is the range of people involved. Men, women, and perhaps children may all have participated in making marks in different places. The cave was not necessarily the domain of only one kind of person. The group prepares to leave. The lamp is lifted. Shadows swing across the painted animals. The hands flare red, then fade into dimness as the flame moves away. You follow the others back through the narrow passage, feeling the cold stone air slowly give way to the smell of trees and night. At the entrance, the outside world feels immense again. Stars, wind, grass, the distant ember glow of camp. You turn once more toward the cave, now only a dark mouth in the rock. Inside, the hands remain where they were placed, waiting in silence. They may last for centuries. They may last for tens of thousands of years. They may be found by people who speak languages not yet born, who carry lights brighter than the sun, who still stop and feel something gentle catch in the chest. You walk back toward camp with the others. No one speaks for a while. The night does not ask for explanation. Behind you, in the darkness of stone, the ancient hands keep touching the wall. The walk back from the cave feels quieter than the walk there. No one rushes. The burning branch has dimmed its glow, now softer, more ember than flame. The air outside feels warmer than the cave, though night has settled fully across the land. Stars scatter above you in a dense pattern, uninterrupted by any distant light. The path beneath your feet is familiar now, though still easy to lose if you stop paying attention. You follow the group in silence, your mind still holding the image of those hands on stone. After a while, one of the adults pauses. It is a small hesitation, barely noticeable, but it changes everything. The others stop too, no one speaks. Their bodies shift alert, but not tense. A head turns toward the darker stretch of trees ahead. Another person listens, not just with ears, but with the whole body. You try to hear what they hear. At first, nothing. Then something faint, a movement. Not loud. A soft displacement of leaves, a shift of weight, something brushing lightly through undergrowth. It could be an animal. It could be the wind. It could be something watching as you walk. The person in front raises a hand, signalling stillness. You hold your breath without realizing it. The hidden area is not empty of other humans. You have already seen one group, one camp, one small circle of life, but the world beyond it holds others, some similar, some different, some familiar in ways you might recognize, others less so. For a long time, modern humans were not alone on the earth. Different human groups lived across wide regions, Neanderthals in Europe and Western Asia, Denisovans farther east, other populations that are known only through fragments of bone and traces of DNA. Their lives overlapped in time and space with people like those in this camp. You listen again. The sound does not come closer. It does not move away. It simply exists for a moment, then fades. Perhaps whatever made it has already changed direction. Perhaps it was never near at all. The person lowers their hand. Movement resumes slower, now more aware. Encounters between different human groups must have happened, though the details remain difficult to see clearly. There are signs of contact in the genetic record. Many people alive today carry small traces of Neanderthal DNA, and some populations carry Denisovan ancestry as well. This suggests that meetings were not always hostile. Sometimes they led to shared lives, at least briefly. You imagine those encounters, two groups approaching cautiously, watching each other from a distance, recognizing shapes that are almost familiar but not quite the same, different faces, different voices, different ways of moving through the land, and then somehow deciding whether to come closer or to turn away. It is impossible to know how often such meetings were peaceful, tense, curious, or avoided entirely. The evidence gives hints but not stories. You walk on your senses sharper now. The trees seem thicker, the spaces between them deeper. Shadows shift with the movement of leaves in the night breeze. Every small sound feels meaningful for a moment before fading back into the background. A faint glow appears ahead. The camp, the fire, has been kept alive, reduced but steady. A few people remain awake, sitting near the embers. They look up as your group returns. No alarm, just recognition. A few quiet words pass between them. You step back into the circle of warmth. The difference is immediate. The darkness retreats slightly. The ground feels known again. The shapes of shelters and tools settle into place. The smell of smoke replaces the sharper sense of the forest. You sit down near the fire, letting your body relax. Someone adds a small piece of wood to the coals. It catches slowly, then brightens. Light grows soft and reassuring. A child stirs in sleep, turning toward the warmth. Another person shifts closer, pulling a covering around their shoulders. You think again about the sound in the forest. Whether it was an animal or something else, it reminds you that this camp is not the only point of life in the landscape. Others move through the same terrain, following their own patterns, carrying their own knowledge, telling their own stories beside their own fires. A quiet detail from the study of ancient humans comes to mind. Some stone tools associated with different groups show distinct styles, almost like signatures. The shape of a blade, the way it was struck, the method of shaping can vary from one region or population to another. These differences suggest that knowledge was shared within groups passed along in ways that created recognizable traditions. If two groups met, they might notice such differences immediately. The angle of a tool, the shape of a point, the way something was held or used. Small clues, but meaningful ones. You look at the tools lying near the fire now, familiar shapes made by familiar hands. They belong to this group, this place, this pattern of living. The fire settles again. The people who returned from the cave speak quietly with those who stayed behind. A few gestures, a few words of shared understanding. No long explanation. Whatever happened inside the cave belongs to those who were there, and perhaps does not need to be fully spoken. The night deepens further. Most of the camp sleeps now. Only a few remain awake, keeping the fire, watching the edges of light. One person sits with their back, straight eyes, scanning the dark beyond the camp. Not fearful, just aware. You lean back slightly, feeling the ground beneath you, the warmth of the fire, the coolness of the air against your face. Somewhere out there, beyond the reach of this small circle, other fires may be burning. Other groups may be sitting in similar arrangements, speaking in different sounds, shaping tools in slightly different ways, telling stories that will never cross into this space. And sometimes perhaps those worlds touched, briefly, softly, leaving behind only the faintest traces in bonestone and memory carried forward in ways no one fully understands. The fire cracks, gently pulling your attention back. Here in this camp the night continues as it always has, quiet, watchful, held together by warmth and presence. And beyond it, the wider human world moves unseen, just out of reach, like a shadow that reminds you are not alone. The night stretches on in a slow, steady calm. The fire is lower now, its flames smaller, its glow deeper and more constant. Most of the camp sleeps. You can hear it in the quiet rhythm of breathing, in the occasional soft shift of a body turning against the ground, in the faint rustle of hides being pulled closer against the chill. You remain awake a little longer, watching. Near the edge of the firelight, one figure is still moving. They sit beside another person who lies on their side, wrapped in a covering that does not quite hide the stiffness in their posture. The seated figure leans forward, adjusting something carefully. Their hands move slowly with a kind of patience that feels different from tool-making or food preparation. This is care. You move closer quietly so as not to disturb the moment. The person lying down breathes unevenly, not loudly but enough to notice. Their leg is stretched out and you can see where it has been wrapped with strips of fibre or hide. The wrapping is firm but not tight enough to cut off movement. A small bundle of plant material rests nearby, perhaps used earlier, perhaps waiting to be used again. The one tending them lifts the edge of the wrapping and checks beneath it. A pause, a gentle adjustment. Then the covering is placed back, smoothed carefully into place. You realize how much effort this requires. To care for someone who cannot move easily means time, attention, and resources. It means gathering food not only for yourself but for another. It means staying close when others walk farther. It means remembering, checking, returning again and again. In the distant past, this kind of care leaves faint traces. Occasionally skeletons are found with signs of healed injuries that would have made survival difficult without support from others. Bones that were once broken, then set and allowed to mend. Teeth worn or lost, yet the individual lived on. Conditions that suggest a person was not abandoned but supported. These glimpses hint at something important. People did not survive alone. You sit nearby and watch as the caregiver offers water, lifting a container carefully to the other's lips. The movement is slow, steady. A few drops spill, darkening the ground. The person drinks, then rests again. No words are needed here. The fire shifts, sending a brief wave of warmth across your face. Shadows move along the shelter walls. The night air presses gently at the edges of the camp, but the centre holds. A child stirs in sleep nearby, rolling closer to an adult. The adult adjusts without waking, fully pulling the covering up around the child's shoulders. Even in rest, attention remains. A small detail often overlooked in discussions of early human life is how much cooperation shapes survival. Strength matters, skill matters, knowledge matters, but none of it carries far without shared effort. Groups that care for one another increase their chances of enduring hardship, passing knowledge forward and maintaining social bonds. You look again at the injured person. They are not working, not gathering, not making tools, not walking long distances, and yet they are here within the circle part of the group. Their presence is not questioned. Their place is held. The caregiver shifts position, stretching their own back briefly before leaning forward again. Fatigue shows in the small movements, the slow blink, the slight pause before reaching out once more. Caring is work even when it looks quiet. You think of how easily such moments disappear from the record. A healed bone may survive, a worn joint may remain. But the hours spent tending the hands, adjusting a wrap, the patience of sitting through the night, none of that leaves a clear mark in the earth. It exists only in the continuation of life itself. There are questions that remain open here. How often did groups care for those who could not fully contribute? Did every group act this way, or did it vary with conditions and culture? How far could compassion extend when resources were scarce? The evidence offers glimpses but not full answers. Still, what you see before you is unmistakable. Care is present. The person lying down shifts slightly, their breathing easing. The caregiver places a hand briefly on their shoulder, a small steady contact. Then they sit back, watching, waiting. The fire dims further. Someone rises from another part of the camp, walks over and adds a piece of wood to the coals. The flames grow again, just enough to maintain warmth through the night. The person glances toward the pair, checking without interrupting, then returns to their place. Awareness moves quietly through the group, even in sleep. You lean back and look upward. The sky's clear, filled with stars. Without artificial light, they seem closer, brighter, more numerous than anything you might see in a modern city. They stretch across the darkness in patterns that have guided people for countless generations, though their meanings have changed with each telling. Below them, this small camp holds its fragile circle. You feel the ground beneath you cool and firm. The air carries the scent of ash and night. The warmth of the fire reaches just enough to keep the chill away. Nearby, the caregiver finally settles, resting against the shelter frame, eyes half closed but still alert. Their work is not done, but it pauses. The injured person sleeps more evenly now. The moment softens. You begin to understand that survival in this hidden era is not only about strength or skill or endurance. It is also about connection, about the decision repeated again and again to remain together, to share, to help, to wait. These choices do not leave monuments. They do not carve themselves into stone walls or rise into towering structures, but they shape lives just as surely as any tool or fire. The night continues slow and steady. Around you the camp breathes as one held together by warmth presence, and the quiet work of caring that no future excavation will fully reveal. And in that quiet, something deeply human endures. The cold comes quietly, but you feel it before you see it. Sometime before dawn, the air shifts. The warmth from the fire is no longer enough to soften the edges of the night. You pull your covering tighter, tucking it beneath your chin. Around you, others do the same, bodies curling inward, conserving heat in small, instinctive ways. The ground feels harder now, as if the chill has settled into it. A faint layer of frost glimmers along the edges of leaves and grass just beyond the camp. You notice it when the firelight flickers outward, catching tiny crystals that were not there before. They shine briefly, then disappear again into shadow. This is a colder time. Not always like this, not everywhere, but across long stretches of the past, the earth moved through cycles of cooling and warming that shaped everything living on it. During colder periods, vast ice sheets covered large parts of the northern continents. Even regions far from the ice felt the effects. Temperatures dropped, rainfall patterns shifted, plants and animals moved or disappeared. Water locked in ice changed the shape of coastlines and rivers. You sit up slowly, looking out across the dim outline of the land. The camp is still here, still intact, but you can sense how fragile it is in the face of these larger forces. A colder season can mean fewer plants, thinner animals, longer journeys. A sudden storm can reshape a familiar place overnight. Wind alone can strip warmth from the body faster than you expect. A person near the fire wakes and immediately reaches for fuel. They add small branches first, then a thicker piece building the flames carefully. The fire responds slowly, then begins to brighten. Heat spreads outward again, touching faces, hands, the edges of hides. A few others stir, drawn back toward warmth. Fire becomes even more important when the world grows cold. You notice how people sit closer now, leaving less space between them. The circle tightens, bodies share heat. A child is pulled closer to an adult. Someone adjusts a covering over two sleepers at once, making sure no gap remains where cold air could slip through. The sky begins to lighten. A pale grey spreads along the horizon, revealing more of the land. Frost lies heavier in the open spaces, coating grass in a thin white layer. When someone steps through it, the ground crunches softly beneath their feet. The sound is delicate, almost brittle. You walk a short distance from the fire and feel the difference immediately. The air bites at your cheeks. Your breath becomes visible, drifting away in small clouds. The tips of your fingers grow numb if left uncovered too long. You understand why clothing, fire and shelter matter so much here. Without them, the body would struggle quickly. Somewhere beyond the hills, colder regions stretch even farther. There are places where winter tightens its grip for months, where snow covers the ground, where the sun barely rises, where survival depends on careful preparation and constant awareness. People reach those places too slowly over generations, carrying knowledge with them. The evidence of that movement appears in many forms: tools adapted for working hides in colder climates, animal bones showing hunting patterns suited to large grazing herds, remains of shelters designed to block wind and hold heat. Even subtle changes in human biology hint at adaptation to colder environments over time. You return to the fire and sit close again. Someone holds their hands over the flames, then presses them against their face, capturing the warmth. Another person lifts a container toward the heat, perhaps warming water or softening food that has grown stiff in the cold. A child wakes and begins to complain softly until a piece of warmed food is placed in their hand. Gradually the camp comes back to life. The cold does not stop the day, but it shapes it. Tasks begin more slowly. Movements are measured. People stay closer together, at first gathering warmth before spreading out again. When they do leave the camp, they carry coverings, tools, and the memory of where warmth can be found again. A quiet detail emerges as you watch. Some of the tools near the fire are placed deliberately close to heat, not too close to damage them, but near enough to keep materials flexible. Cold can make certain fibers brittle, certain surfaces harder to work. Warming them slightly can make a difference. It is a small adjustment, but one learned through experience. You think about how knowledge like this builds over time. One winter teaches something, the next winter confirms it. A harsh season reveals what fails. A milder one allows recovery. Slowly patterns form, passed from one generation to the next. Still, there is no perfect control. Climate shifts can happen over years, decades, or longer spans. A place that once supported a group well may become less reliable. Animals may change their routes. Plants may appear later or not at all. Water sources may shrink or freeze. There is ongoing uncertainty in how quickly ancient people could respond to these changes. Some movements appear gradual, following slow shifts in environment. Others seem more sudden, perhaps driven by pressures we only partly understand. The record offers pieces, but not always the full sequence. You watch as a group prepares to leave the camp again this time, with heavier coverings and a more cautious pace. They move toward the forest, where trees may block some of the wind. Others remain tending the fire, maintaining the center. The sun rises, but its warmth is slow to arrive. Light spreads across the frost, turning it briefly bright, then softening as the day progresses. Drops of water form and slide down blades of grass. The ground begins to release its hold on the cold. The camp loosens again. People move outward, though not as far as before. The memory of the cold remains in the body, guiding choices. Stay within reach of shelter. Return before the light fades too far. Gather what is needed without straying too long. You feel the rhythm of this adjustment. Life here is not fixed. It bends with the world. It responds, adapts, shifts. Nothing is guaranteed. Everything is observed. You sit near the fire once more, feeling its steady warmth against the cooling air. Smoke drifts upward, carrying with it the scent of burning wood and the quiet persistence of human effort against the cold. Around you the camp continues, not unchanged but unbroken. And as the frost melts into the soil, you understand that this hidden era was shaped not only by what people did, but by what the earth demanded of them season after season without pause. The cold loosens its grip as the day stretches forward. By midday, the frost has disappeared entirely, leaving the ground dark and slightly damp where it melted. The air is still cool, but no longer sharp. You feel it in the way people move again, less tightly wrapped, more willing to step away from the fire and into the open spaces. You find yourself drawn upward. A gentle slope rises beyond the camp, not steep, but enough to give a wider view of the land. You follow it slowly, your feet pressing into softened soil, leaving faint impressions that will not last long. The grass here is shorter shaped by wind and grazing animals. It brushes lightly against your legs as you climb. When you reach the top, you stop. The world opens around you. The river curves in the distance, a pale ribbon catching the light. The forest gathers in darker patches broken by clearings and narrow trails. Farther still, the coastline lies beyond sight, but you can sense its direction, a faint memory carried by the air. Above everything, the sky stretches wide and clear, and now with the sun fully risen, the stars are gone. At night they felt close enough to touch. Now they have retreated, completely hidden by daylight, yet you know they are still there, waiting for darkness to reveal them again. You sit on a flat stone and look upward. For people in this era, the sky was more than a backdrop. It was a constant presence, shifting, slowly marking time in ways that required attention rather than measurement. The position of the sun guided daily movement. The phases of the moon shaped the brightness of nights. The return of certain stars at specific times of year may have helped signal seasonal changes. There are places in the archaeological record where alignments suggest attention to the sky. Stones arranged to mark sunrise or sunset. Structures oriented towards certain points on the horizon. These appear much later than the time you're standing in now, but they hint at something older, a habit of watching, of noticing patterns above as well as below. You imagine lying on the ground here at night watching the sky slowly turn, the stars shifting their positions though, too slowly to notice in a single glance. The moon growing and shrinking over many nights, the way certain constellations rise and fall with the seasons. No one writes these patterns down. They are remembered. You hear footsteps behind you. Another person has climbed the slope carrying nothing, simply looking. They sit a short distance away, following your gaze upward, though the sky now shows only blue. You wonder how they understand it. Do they see shapes in the stars when night returns? Do they tell stories about them? Do certain patterns carry meaning, guiding movement or marking time? Or is the sky simply observed without the need to name every detail? There is no single answer. Across different parts of the world, people have developed many ways of interpreting the sky. Some see animals, others see ancestors, others see paths or signals. These systems vary widely, and it is difficult to know how far back any specific interpretation might go. What remains clear is that humans have long been attentive to the patterns above them. A small detail lingers in your mind. Even without formal astronomy, the human eye is remarkably good at detecting repetition. The return of a bright star at dawn, the lengthening of daylight, the shifting angle of shadows. Over time, these observations can become a kind of calendar guiding decisions about movement, gathering and preparation. You lower your gaze and look out across the land again. From this height, the camp is visible though small. Smoke rises in a thin line. Figures move slowly between shelters and open ground. The fire is still there, though less prominent in daylight. It feels distant, even though you walked from it only moments ago. The person beside you points toward the horizon. You follow the gesture and see a faint line of darker clouds gathering far away. Not immediate, not threatening yet, but present. The kind of detail that might be missed if you were not looking carefully. Weather is another language. The sky does not speak in words, but it gives signs, cloud shapes, wind direction, changes in light, the behavior of animals. All of these can signal what is coming, though never with perfect certainty. People here learn to read those signs as part of daily life. You stand and stretch, feeling the warmth of the sun on your back. The stone beneath your feet has begun to warm as well, holding heat that will slowly fade again when evening returns. The person beside you rises too. They take one last look at the horizon, then begin to walk back down the slope. You follow. As you descend, the details of the camp return, the shapes of shelters, the scattered tools, the movement of people. The smell of smoke grows stronger again, grounding you in the present moment. A child runs past, chasing something invisible or perhaps entirely imagined. Their laughter breaks the quiet briefly, then fades as they are called back. You sit near the fire once more. The day has settled into a steady rhythm again. Work continues, but without urgency. Movements are familiar. tasks repeat, each one reinforcing knowledge that does not need to be written down. You think about the sky again. At night, it offered a map of light. By day it becomes a source of warmth and a measure of time. It frames everything yet remains untouched by the small details of human life below. And still people watch it. They look up again and again, noticing changes that happen slowly, almost invisibly. They build memory from repetition. They carry that memory forward, sharing it in ways that leave no physical trace. The hidden era is not only beneath your feet in the soil and the tools and the faint remains of camps. It is above you as well, in patterns that repeat across generations, guiding movement, shaping understanding, and offering a sense of place within something much larger. You lean back slightly, letting the warmth of the sun settle into your shoulders. Above you the sky stretches wide and quiet, and somewhere beyond its brightness the stars wait patiently for night to return. As afternoon slips toward evening, the camp grows quieter in a way you've not felt before. It is not the calm of ordinary rest, not the sleepy ease after food or the gentle silence that follows music. This quiet has a different weight. People move slowly with softened voices and lowered eyes. Even the children seem to understand that the air has changed, though they do not fully know what to do with it. Near the far edge of the camp, beyond the shelters and away from the main hearth, a small group has gathered. You walk toward them carefully. The ground there is slightly raised drier than the riverbank, protected from flooding by a low slope. A shallow pit has been opened in the earth. Beside it lies a body wrapped in hide, surrounded by people who sit or stand close together. No one speaks loudly. The body belongs to someone who was part of this group. Perhaps an elder, perhaps a hunter, perhaps a gatherer with long memory of plants, paths, weather and stories. Perhaps someone who once held a child near the fire, or taught a young hand how to twist cord, or laughed at a joke no future person will ever hear. Now they are still. Death in this hidden age is difficult for the future to understand because grief does not fossilize. The ache of absence leaves no clear layer in the soil. Yet burials, when they survive, show that some ancient humans treated the dead with care. Bodies were sometimes placed deliberately, sometimes accompanied by tools, ochre shells, animal bones, or other objects. These traces suggest that death was not always treated as simple disposal. It could be marked, remembered, and given meaning. You stop at a respectful distance. The air smells of earth newly opened, cool and mineral rich. The soil is dark where it has been cut. A person kneels beside the wrapped body and smooths the hide covering with both hands. The motion is tender, practical, final. A small child clings to an adult nearby, watching with wide eyes. The adult rests a hand on the child's shoulder. No long explanation can make this simple. Someone was here. Now they are not. The group lifts the body carefully. There is effort in the movement, but no haste. Several people work together, lowering the wrapped form into the shallow grave. The hide shifts softly. A cord at one end is adjusted. Someone places a small object near the body, perhaps a tool, perhaps an ornament, perhaps something that belonged to the person in life. You cannot know what it means. That uncertainty feels important. At some ancient burial sites, red ochre has been found sprinkled over bodies or placed nearby. Ochre appears in many parts of prehistory, used for pigment decoration, hide processing, and possibly symbolic purposes. Its presence in burials has inspired many interpretations. Some see it as a sign of ritual belief. Others urge caution, reminding us that materials can have multiple uses and meanings. Here in the fading light, someone opens a small pouch. A red powder rests inside. They pinch a little between fingers and let it fall gently over the hide. It settles like dust from a dark red sunset. The colour is vivid against the muted brown covering. For a moment it seems almost warm. No one explains. No one needs to explain. The act has meaning because the people doing it know what it means and because those watching feel it. You hear the first handfuls of earth fall back into the grave. Soft, dry, repeated. The sound is unlike any other in the camp, not tool-making, not footsteps, not fire. It is quieter than all of those, yet somehow more complete. A return, a covering, a closing. One person begins to hum very low. It may be the same melody you heard near the fire or something close to it. Another joins for a few notes, then falls silent. The sound seems less like song than breath given shape. You look at the faces around the grave. Grief here is not theatrical. It is not loud. It rests in small things. A clenched hand, a lowered head, a person turning away for a moment then turning back, someone pressing fingers to their own chest, someone touching the earth before letting it fall. In modern life, death is often hidden behind buildings, paperwork, scheduled ceremonies and polite phrases. Here it happens within the same world as food, fire, children, tools and weather. It is not separate from life, it sits close beside it. A small but striking detail from some ancient graves is that bodies were sometimes placed in curled positions as though sleeping or folded inward. The reasons varied, and may have involved practical space cultural custom or ideas we cannot recover. To modern eyes, these positions can feel intimate, almost protective, though interpretation must remain gentle. The grave slowly fills. The last soil is smoothed by hand. Stones are placed over part of it, not in a grand monument, but enough to mark, protect, or remember. A few shells are set near one edge. They click faintly as they touch the stones. Perhaps they were gathered from the coast you visited. Perhaps the person once wore them. Perhaps they mark a connection between land, sea, body, and memory. The child nearby begins to cry softly. The adult gathers them close, pressing the child's face against their clothing. The crying quiets, becoming small, uneven breaths. The group remains gathered for a while after the grave is closed. No one seems ready to leave immediately. The evening light turns blue around them. Smoke from the main fire drifts in the distance, reminding you that the ordinary needs of life continue. Someone will still have to tend the hearth. Someone will still prepare food. Someone will still wake in the night and listen for animals beyond the dark. But for now they pause. That pause is part of the evidence too, though no future excavation can measure it. You sit with them in the gentle darkening air. The first stars appear. The ground cools. Somewhere a night bird calls, then falls silent. The grave lies quiet, newly made its stones dim in the fading light. What did these people believe happened after death? Did they imagine a journey, a return, a shadow, a sleep, a presence among stars or ancestors? No one can say with certainty. Different groups may have held different thoughts, and many may have left no trace at all. The grave gives us care but not doctrine, tenderness but not a complete map of belief. Still you feel something unmistakable. This person mattered. The group rises slowly one by one. Some return toward the fire, others linger a little longer. One person touches the stones lightly before leaving. You remain for a moment watching the grave settle into the evening. No inscription marks a name, no date is carved, no words remain, and yet the place is not empty. It holds memory not in writing but in the bodies of those who will pass it tomorrow and remember who lies there. At last you turn back toward the camp. The fire glows ahead, warm and low. Around it life is gathering again, quieter now changed in some small way by absence. Behind you beneath the quiet earth one life has entered the hidden record. Fragile, incomplete, but not forgotten by those who loved them. Morning comes gently after the burial. No one speaks of it loudly. The camp simply wakes around the new absence, folding it into the ordinary work of breath, food, smoke and light. The fire is stirred, water is carried. A child asks something in a low voice and receives a quiet answer. The grave at the edge of the camp lies still beneath its small stones touched by pale sunrise. You stand near the hearth, feeling the day begin again. There is comfort in that, and also a kind of ache. The world does not pause forever. Hunger returns, weather shifts, tools need repair, feet must move. Even grief, heavy as it feels, must share space with breakfast, which is not very poetic but extremely human. A group prepares to walk toward the open land beyond the river, and you follow. The morning air is cool, though softer than yesterday. Mist lies low over the ground, caught in hollows and pale grass. Each step darkens the dew. Behind you, the camp fades into smoke and shade. Ahead, the land stretches wide and strangely flat as if it has been waiting. You soon realize this place is not as permanent as it looks. Much of the earth beneath your feet will one day disappear beneath water. During colder Ice Age periods, sea levels were far lower than today because so much water was locked away in glaciers. Land bridges, coastal plains, river valleys and islands connected places that are now separated by sea. People and animals crossed these exposed lands sometimes for generations without knowing that future maps would erase their paths completely. You walk across one of these temporary worlds. The soil is firm in places, damp in others. Low plants spread across the ground. Birds gather near shallow pools left by old channels. Far off you see a line of darker reeds that may mark a stream or marsh. The air smells of wet grass salt in the distance and mud warming under the sun. This is not a barren bridge between better places, it is a living landscape. People could gather shellfish along its edges, hunt animals that grazed on its plains, find fresh water in channels and camp on rises safe from damp ground. Children could be born here. Elders could die here. Stories could attach themselves to hills that no longer exist. You pause beside a shallow pool. Small insects skim the surface. A bird steps delicately through the water, lifting its feet as if offended by mud. Nearby, one of the walkers kneels and touches the ground, examining a track pressed into the soft edge. Another scans the horizon. The landscape feels open but not empty. A revealing detail from underwater archaeology is that submerged prehistoric landscapes have been found in several parts of the world, including ancient forests, worked stone tools and traces of human activity now lying beneath coastal waters. These discoveries remind you that the sea did not simply cover blank space. It covered homes, paths, hunting grounds, and memory. You continue walking. The group moves with caution but familiarity, as though this exposed land is well known to them. They avoid marshy patches, follow slightly raised ground, and use distant features as guides. A low ridge, a cluster of stones, a bend in a watercourse. None of these will appear on future maps, none will survive in the usual way. Yet for now they guide every step. You think about the word island. To you an island might mean a fixed shape on a map ringed in blue. Here islands may appear and disappear across generations as seas rise, rivers shift, storms cut channels, and ice melts far away. Land is not a guarantee. It is a season written in stone, water, and climate. There's still much uncertainty in tracing exactly how people used these drowned landscapes. Some specialists see them as crucial corridors for migration and contact. Others point out how difficult it is to recover evidence from beneath the sea, where currents, sediment, and erosion can scatter the record. The missing evidence is not necessarily proof of absence. It may simply be sleeping underwater. The walkers stop near a small rise overlooking a wide flat plain. From here you can see animals in the distance, dark shapes moving slowly through pale grass. The wind carries their scent only faintly. One person crouches studying them. Another points toward a line of low ground where approach might be easier. No one moves quickly. Decisions here are quiet. The group observes, waits, calculates without numbers. Wind direction, distance, ground softness, the position of water, the possibility of other animals hidden from view. Then, as gently as the decision formed, it dissolves. The group does not pursue. Perhaps the distance is too great. Perhaps the wind is wrong. Perhaps today's purpose is not hunting at all. You walk on. At the edge of the rise you notice small stones arranged loosely near a patch of dry ground. They might be natural, or they might mark an old fireplace, a temporary stop, a memory of someone's hands. Nothing about them declares certainty. That is the way of this world. It offers hints, then asks patience. A modern person might crave a signpost. You are here. This was a camp. This was a route. This mattered. But the past rarely provides such tidy labelling, possibly, because the past never expected to be audited by people with clipboards and dating techniques. The sun climbs higher. The mist burns away. The land becomes clearer, wider, more exposed. You feel the wind now steady across the flat ground. It presses your clothing against your body and carries the distant cry of birds. Somewhere beyond the horizon lies water that will one day return, perhaps not tomorrow, perhaps not for many generations. Slowly as the climate warms and glaciers melt, seas will rise. They will enter low valleys, fill channels, surround high ground, and turn familiar routes into shorelines. Camps will vanish beneath waves. Graves may be lost. Shell heaps may scatter. Paths will become sea floor. The thought is strangely tender. The people walking beside you do not know they live on borrowed land, or perhaps they know it in another way through stories of shifting water, drowned trees, storms that changed to shore elders who remember when a crossing was easier. Human memory can hold environmental change, but it holds it in story, not satellite maps. You turn back at last. The path toward camp is marked by nothing more than remembered direction, low rises, and the sun's position. The group walks steadily, bundles shifting at their sides. Dust clings to ankles. The smell of smoke slowly returns as you near the river and the familiar trees. Behind you the exposed land lies bright in afternoon light. For now it is solid beneath the sky. One day it will be hidden beneath the sea, and people far in the future will wonder how much of the human story went with it. You reach the river crossing as the water glints in the sun. Your feet enter the shallows, cold and clear. Ripples spread outward, bending the reflection of the sky. On the far bank the camp waits, small and temporary as all camps are. And beyond all of it, the drowned world waits too quiet beneath a future ocean. By the time you return to the camp, the light has begun to soften again. The afternoon stretches long and quiet, the kind of slow warmth that makes everything feel slightly suspended. The fire burns low more for presence than need. People move through small tasks without urgency. A tool is adjusted, a bundle is checked. A child naps in the shade of a shelter, one arm flung across their face as if the sun has personally offended them. You settle near the edge of the camp, watching as a few individuals prepare to leave again, though this time their purpose feels different. They carry items that are not immediately needed. A small bundle of shells from the coast, a piece of red ochre wrapped carefully, a stone tool that appears finely made, sharper, more deliberate than the others scattered around the camp. These are not the objects you bring for a quick gathering trip. These are things meant to travel. You follow at a distance as they walk toward the river, then along its curve, moving beyond the places you have already seen. The path feels familiar, but the direction stretches farther. The land opens, then narrows again, guiding you toward a place where the ground rises slightly and the trees form a loose boundary. There another group waits. You notice them before you hear them. Shapes moving between trunks, figures standing still watching as the approaching group draws closer. There is no sudden movement, no rush, no visible tension, just awareness. The two groups stop a short distance apart. For a moment nothing happens. Then one person steps forward slowly, hands visible, posture open. Another answers from the opposite side. A few words are exchanged, though you cannot understand them. The tones are calm, measured. Gradually the distance closes. You watch as the bundles are opened. Shells are lifted into the light, their surfaces catching the sun in pale flashes. The red ochre is unwrapped, revealing its deep colour. The finely made tool is turned, carefully examined, passed from one hand to another. In return, the second group offers items of their own. A different kind of stone, darker and smoother. A piece of shaped bone. Something wrapped in leaves, perhaps food prepared in a way unfamiliar to the first group. The exchange is slow, deliberate, accompanied by gestures and quiet speech. Nothing here feels like trade in the modern sense. There are no numbers, no fixed values, no sense of exact equivalence. Instead, the exchange seems to rest on relationship, on mutual recognition, on the act of giving and receiving itself. You begin to understand that objects can travel farther than people. Archaeological discoveries have revealed tools made from stone that originated far from where they were found, sometimes hundreds of kilometers away. These movements suggest that materials passed through many hands, carried across landscapes through networks of contact that stretched well beyond any single camp. You look at the stone now being offered. It is unlike the stone used near your camp. Its texture is finer, its colour deeper. It may have come from a place you have never seen, carried by people who walked long distances then passed onward again. Each exchange extends its journey, linking groups who may never meet directly. A small but telling detail catches your attention. One of the shells from the coast is held up, examined, then placed gently around someone's neck, threaded onto a cord. The act is not hurried. It is careful, almost ceremonial. The shell becomes more than an object. It becomes part of a person. You wonder how many such items moved across the land in this way, not just for practical use, but for meaning, for identity, for connection. A shell from the sea-worn far inland, a stone from distant hills used beside a river. Each piece carries a story of movement, even if no one tells it aloud. The two groups sit together for a while. Food is shared. Small portions passed from one hand to another, a gesture here, a nod there. Children watch from behind adults, curious but cautious. One child edges closer, drawn by the unfamiliar faces, then retreats quickly when noticed. There is a quiet negotiation happening, though it does not resemble anything formal. Trust is being built or reinforced. You notice how much depends on memory. People must remember past meetings. Who was generous? Who was cautious? Who can be approached again? These relationships shape future movement, future exchange, future safety. There is still much that remains unclear about how these networks functioned in deep prehistory. Some connections may have been regular, forming stable routes of exchange. Others may have been rare, shaped by chance encounters or shifting circumstances. The patterns exist, but their full structure remains just beyond reach. You sit at the edge of the gathering, feeling the rhythm of the interaction. Voices rise and fall softly. Hands move as objects are shown, explained, appreciated. The atmosphere remains calm but attentive. No one fully relaxes, yet no one seems ready to leave. After some time, the exchange slows. Items are wrapped again. A few final gestures are made. One person touches another's arm briefly, a sign of acknowledgement, perhaps of agreement, perhaps simply of presence. Then, as gently as it began, the meeting ends. The two groups step back. They turn in different directions, returning to their own paths, carrying with them new objects, new impressions, new threads of connection. You follow your group as they walk back toward the river. The sun has begun to lower, casting longer shadows across the ground. The air cools slightly. The world feels unchanged and yet not quite the same. Back at the camp, the new items are shown to those who stayed behind. The unfamiliar stone is examined closely. The shaped bone is passed around. The shell, now worn at someone's neck, catches the fading light. There is quiet interest, quiet approval. No announcement is made. The exchange becomes part of the camp's life as naturally as anything else. You sit near the fire as it is stirred back into brightness. Smoke rises once more. The familiar sounds return. The rhythm of the day continues. But now within this small circle there are traces of other places, other groups, other paths, connections that stretch beyond what you can see, and you begin to realize that even in this hidden era where so much has vanished, people were never entirely isolated. They were part of a wider world, one that moved slowly and quietly across land that would not always remain. The new stone from the distant group rests near the fire that evening, dark and smooth, catching small flashes of light whenever the flames rise. People look at it now and then, not with surprise anymore, but with the quiet interest given to something that has crossed a long distance and become part of camp life. By morning, the camp has absorbed it. That is how many changes seem to happen here. Not as great announcements, not as someone standing proudly beside a diagram and saying, "Well, everyone, we have entered a new phase of human development." Life is rarely that tidy, and prehistory is especially unhelpful about dramatic chapter titles. Instead, change arrives as a habit, A place revisited, a plant encouraged, a seed dropped near camp, a patch remembered from last season. You walk with a small group toward a sunny opening beyond the trees. The day is mild with a soft breeze moving through the grass. The river glints behind you, and the camp smoke thins into the pale sky. Birds call from the shrubs sharp little notes that rise and vanish. The people ahead of you carry digging sticks, baskets, and a few stone flakes. Their pace is familiar, but today they are not searching randomly. They're returning to a known place. The clearing appears after a short walk. At first it seems ordinary. Tall grasses, low shrubs, plants with broad leaves close to the ground. But the group moves into it with the confidence of people arriving somewhere remembered. One person kneels beside a patch of roots. Another checks seed heads with a careful hand. Someone points to a smaller plant and speaks softly to a child. Long before farming, humans knew plants in intimate detail. They knew when roots swelled, when fruits ripened, when seeds dried, when leaves became bitter, and when a plant returned after rain. This was not casual knowledge. It was a living library carried in memory, taste, smell, and repeated attention. You kneel beside a woman loosening soil with a digging stick. She does not tear everything up. She works around the plant, removing some roots and leaving others behind. The motion is selective, careful. It suggests not only hunger today, but the possibility of food later. Nearby, someone shakes ripe seeds into a basket. The sound is dry and soft like tiny rain. A few seeds spill onto the ground. No one hurries to collect everyone. Perhaps they're too small to matter. Perhaps leaving some is simply part of the process. Perhaps, without needing a word like agriculture, people already understand that plants return when given the chance. You watch the seeds fall into dust and sunlight. It is easy to imagine farming as a sudden invention. One bright day when someone looked at a seed and thought, "Ah yes, civilization. Very neat, very efficient." Probably not how it happened. In many parts of the world, the shift toward cultivation unfolded gradually through repeated gathering, tending, burning, clearing, transplanting, storing and returning. People did not wake up one morning as farmers. They drifted, experimented, adjusted and learned. A small detail makes this feel especially real. Some wild plants respond quickly to human disturbance. Open a patch of ground, burn old growth, drop seeds near camp, or return to harvest the same stand repeatedly, and certain useful species may thrive. People might notice this long before they describe it as management. The landscape itself becomes a partner in the lesson. You stand and walk through the clearing. The ground is warmer here, exposed to full sun. Insects flicker above the plants. The smell is a mixture of dry grass, green stems, and earth newly opened by digging. A child holds up a root proud of its size and an adult nods before showing where to cut away the inedible portion. Nothing is wasted without thought. Leaves are sorted, stems are tied, roots are cleaned, seeds are kept dry. The group works with gentle focus, each person handling a different part of the harvest. You notice one older person moving slowly along the edge of the clearing. They are not gathering much. Instead, they seem to inspect. They bend close to plants, touch leaves, break a stem, smell it, then move on. Their face is thoughtful. This person may hold a memory older than the younger adults. They may know that this patch was better after a fire 3 seasons ago, or that the plants near the damp ground rot if gathered too late, or that seeds from the higher slope taste different from those below. To call this simple foraging would miss the depth of it. There are still unanswered questions about where gathering ends and cultivation begins. Some ancient communities may have shaped plant landscapes for thousands of years before clear farming villages appeared. Others may have remained highly mobile while still encouraging useful plants in subtle ways. The evidence is difficult because early plant work leaves traces that are delicate, scattered, and easily confused with natural processes. A few seeds on the ground do not sign a confession. Still, the pattern matters. You follow the group to the far side of the clearing where a cluster of plants grows near a patch of ash-darkened soil. Perhaps a fire passed through here naturally. Perhaps people burn the area deliberately. Fire can clear old growth, return nutrients, make travel easier, and encourage certain plants. Used carefully, it becomes a tool of landscape shaping, not just warmth and cooking. The idea feels powerful. These people are not separate from the land, merely taking from it and moving on. They are noticing how it responds. Their actions leave marks, even if those marks are softer than walls or ploughed fields. A basket fills with seeds, another with roots. Leaves are bundled with cord. Someone uses a stone flake to cut stems cleanly. The rhythm of work is soothing. Cut, gather, shake, sort, tie, breathe. You hear the distant river faint through the trees. The sun climbs higher. Sweat gathers lightly at the back of your neck. The smell of crushed leaves grows stronger as the baskets fill. A child grows tired and sits in the shade picking seeds from their clothing. An adult gives them a small handful of berries and peace is restored as it often is with snacks. When the group finally turns back, they carry more than food. They carry timing, memory, a quiet promise to return when the next part of the season arrives. At camp, the harvest is spread near the fire. Some roots are placed close to the coals. Seeds are set on a hide to dry. Leaves are sorted for cooking wrapping or perhaps medicine. The older person from the clearing speaks with others, gesturing back toward the direction you came from. A decision may be forming. Return tomorrow. Wait a few days. Move closer later in the season. No one calls this the beginning of farming. No one needs to. But as you sit beside the drying seeds, watching them glow in the late light, you sense the slow turning of human history. Not a sharp turn. Not yet. More like a path bending so gradually that those walking it may not notice until generations have passed. Before fields, there were remembered patches. Before granaries, there were baskets and dry hides. Before villages, there were camps returning again and again to places where plants answered human attention. The fire crackles softly. A seed slips from the edge of the hide and falls into the dust near your foot. No one sees it. Perhaps nothing will come of it. Perhaps something will. The afternoon leans gently toward evening again, and the camp carries on with its quiet, steady rhythm. The seeds you saw earlier lie spread out to dry, their faint scent drifting into the warm air. A few people sort them with patient fingers, while others tend the fire, adjust coverings, or simply sit and rest. Your attention drifts toward the edge of the camp where movement catches your eye. Animals. Not wild herds in the distance this time, but something closer, more familiar. A small group of animals lingers just beyond the clearing, watching the humans as carefully as the humans watch them. They do not rush forward, nor do they flee immediately. They exist in that delicate middle space between caution and curiosity. You walk a little closer. The animals are lean alert, their coats rough but not unkempt. They resemble wolves, though something in their posture feels different. Less rigid, less distant. One lowers its head slightly, sniffing the air, then looks up again. The people in the camp do not react with alarm. No one reaches for a weapon, no one shouts. Instead, a few individuals glance toward the animals, then continue their work as if this presence is not entirely unexpected. The relationship between humans and animals in this era is complex, shifting, and often subtle. Most animals remain wild, moving according to their own needs, following seasonal patterns and instinct. Yet some species seem to edge closer to human life, drawn by opportunity. Firelight, food scraps, safety from larger predators. You notice a person near the edge of the camp toss a small piece of leftover food toward the ground. Not directly at the animals, but not far from them either. The piece lands softly. One of the animals steps forward, cautious pauses, then takes it quickly before retreating a few steps. The distance remains, but something has begun. One of the quieter insights from archaeological and genetic research is that the domestication of animals likely started not with a grand plan, but through gradual interactions like this. Wolves that were less fearful of humans may have lingered near camps scavenging scraps. Over generations, those with calmer temperaments may have stayed closer, forming a different kind of relationship. You watch the animals move. They circle slightly, never fully turning their backs, never fully committing to approach. Their eyes catch the light in brief flashes. Their ears flick at small sounds. They're alert, intelligent, measuring risk constantly. A child notices them and takes a step forward. An adult gently places a hand on the child's shoulder, holding them back. The lesson is silent, but clear. Close, but not too close. Not yet. The animals are not pets, not companions in the modern sense. They are something in between, a possibility not fully formed. You crouch slightly, observing the ground between camp and animals. There are faint tracks layered over older ones. Some prints overlap with human footsteps. Others diverge, moving along the edge of the clearing. It suggests that these visits are not entirely new. This has happened before. A small detail comes to mind as you watch. In some archaeological sites, early dog remains show differences from wolves, including changes in size, skull shape, and behaviour inferred from burial contexts. These changes likely emerged over long periods, not through a single event, but through repeated proximity and interaction. You look again at the animals. One sits briefly, then stands again, unsure whether to settle or move on. Another lowers its head, sniffing near a patch of ground where food was dropped earlier. Their movements are careful, restrained, as though they understand that this place offers something valuable, but not without conditions. The sun lowers, casting longer shadows across the clearing. The animals begin to withdraw, not in fear, but in decision. The light is fading. The forest beyond offers its own opportunities, its own risks. They move back toward it step by step, pausing once more to look over their shoulders before disappearing among the trees. The camp exhales slightly, though no one seemed tense before. Life continues. You return to the fire as it's fed again, the flames rising brighter in the cooling air. The warmth spreads, drawing people closer. The seeds are gathered in the tools set aside, the day's work settling into memory. You think about the brief encounter. It was quiet, almost unremarkable. No dramatic turning point. No sudden bond formed. And yet within that moment lies the beginning of something that will shape human history in ways these people cannot imagine. Partnership. Not immediate, not guaranteed, but possible. There are still many uncertainties about how and where animal domestication began. Different regions, different species, different timelines. Some relationships may have formed and faded repeatedly before lasting ones took hold. The evidence, like so much of this era, offers glimpses rather than complete narratives. You sit near the fire and watch the shadows move again. Somewhere beyond the trees, those animals continue their own lives, following scents, sounds, and instincts. They may return, they may not. If they do, the distance might grow smaller, or it might remain exactly as it is. The fire crackles softly. A child asks something, pointing toward where the animals vanished. An adult answers with a few quiet words and a gesture that suggests patience. Not now, maybe later, or simply that is how things are. You lean back, feeling the ground beneath you, the warmth against your skin, the cool air brushing your face. The hidden era reveals itself in these small edges. A step closer, a pause, a shared space that was not shared before. Nothing dramatic, just the beginning of a path that will take many generations to walk. Evening settles once more, and with it comes a quieter kind of work. Not gathering, not travelling, not watching distant animals or reading the sky. This work stays close to the body, close to the ground, close to comfort itself. You notice it first in the small adjustments people make as the light fades. A mat is unrolled near the fire, its woven surface slightly uneven, but soft enough to separate skin from the hardness of the earth. Someone shakes it gently, sending a faint cloud of dust into the air, then lays it flat again with care. Another person brings a bundle of dried grasses and spreads them in a shallow layer beneath a sleeping space, adding a cushion that will make the night easier. You step closer and kneel, pressing your hand lightly against the mat. It yields just enough. It is not luxury in the modern sense. There are no soft mattresses, no pillows shaped for perfect support, no blankets measured in threads and warmth ratings. But it is thoughtful. It is intentional. It is the difference between enduring the night and resting within it. You begin to notice more. A small container sits near the edge of the shelter, shallow and darkened inside. It holds a trace of fat or oil with a simple wick resting along one side. When lit, it produces a small steady flame gentler than the open fire. The light flickers softly, illuminating just enough space for quiet tasks. This kind of simple lamp appears in various forms across ancient sites, often made from stone or shaped material that can hold fuel and flame safely. It offers a quieter light, something more controlled than the shifting energy of the hearth. You watch as someone lights it, shielding the flame with their hand until it steadies. The glow is warm and low, casting a small circle of calm inside the shelter. Nearby, another person works with a bundle of reeds, weaving them into a tighter pattern. The movement is slow, deliberate. Over and under, over and under. The reeds bend without breaking, guided into shape by practiced hands. The result will likely serve many purposes: a mat, a cover, a barrier against wind, a surface for drying seeds. You run your fingers along the edge of one finished piece. It feels slightly rough but sturdy. The fibres press gently against your skin, leaving faint impressions. You imagine lying on it through the night, feeling its texture beneath you, hearing the quiet rustle as you shift. Comfort here is not a single object. It is a collection of small decisions. Better place to lie, a softer surface, a covering that blocks wind, a lamp that reduces strain on the eyes, a bundle placed just within reach, a tool kept close enough to find in the dark. These choices build a kind of quiet ease. A detail often missed in the study of early human life is how many of these everyday items rarely survive. Materials like plant fibres, grasses, bark, and soft wood decay quickly unless preserved under unusual conditions. This means that much of what made life more comfortable disappears long before anyone has the chance to study it. The archaeological record then can feel harsher than reality. It shows stone and bone clearly but hides the softer side of living. The woven mats, the carefully arranged bedding, the small containers, the objects that shaped daily comfort rather than dramatic survival. You sit inside the shelter as the lamp flickers. Outside, the fire continues to burn its light, reaching through the entrance. Inside, the air is warmer, more contained. The sounds of the camp soften, slightly filtered through layers of hide and plant covering. Someone enters and places a small bundle near the wall. They untie it and reveal a collection of items, a few tools, a piece of cord, a small pouch. They arrange them with care, each in a place that seems chosen rather than random. Organisation here is subtle. There are no shelves, no boxes labelled for easy reference, no neatly folded stacks arranged by size and colour. Instead, there is memory. Each person knows where things belong, not because they are written down, but because they have placed them there before, again and again. You notice a shallow depression in the ground where someone has slept many times. The soil is slightly compacted, smoother than the surrounding area. It holds the faint shape of repeated rest. Nearby, a small stone sits just within reach. Perhaps it serves as a tool, perhaps as a marker, perhaps simply because it feels right to have it there. A quiet question lingers. How much of comfort is physical and how much is familiarity? You think of modern spaces filled with objects designed for ease, soft chairs, climate control, artificial light that never flickers. And yet comfort there often depends on habit, a favourite spot, a known arrangement, a sense of place. Here the same principle holds, though in simpler form. The mat is familiar, the shelter is known, the objects are where they should be. The fire is close enough to reach far enough to be safe. That is enough. Outside the night deepens. The sounds of insects rise again. A distant call echoes briefly, then fades. The wind moves lightly through the trees, brushing against the shelter covering with a soft whisper. Inside the lamp burns steadily. You lie back on the mat, feeling its texture beneath you. It is not perfectly smooth, not entirely soft, but it supports your body in a way that feels intentional. The covering above shifts slightly with the breeze but holds. You pull a hide over yourself. It carries warmth from earlier, along with the faint scent of smoke and earth. The combination is oddly comforting, grounding you in the moment. Around you, others settle into their own spaces. A child curls against an adult. Someone adjusts a covering. Another person blows gently on the lamp, dimming it until only a faint glow remains. The shelter darkens, leaving only the soft outline of shapes. The fire outside continues to flicker, its light slipping through the entrance in slow pulses. You close your eyes for a moment, then open them again, watching the movement of shadow and light. Comfort here is not about removing every discomfort. The ground is still firm, the air still cool, the night still present. But within those limits, people have shaped a space that supports rest, that allows the body to recover, that makes the next day possible. It is a quiet achievement, one that leaves almost no trace, and yet without it, everything else becomes harder. You shift slightly, feeling the mat beneath you, the covering around you, the warmth fading slowly as the night deepens. Outside, the fire watches over the camp. Inside, the shelter holds its gentle space. And within that space, you begin to drift, carried by the soft balance between effort and rest that has shaped human life for longer than any record can show. You wake slowly, not to a sound, but to a feeling, a shift in light, a change in air, the subtle awareness that the night has passed and morning is beginning again. Your body adjusts before your mind fully catches up. The mat beneath you is still warm in places. The covering rests lightly across your shoulders. Outside, the fire has softened into a quiet glow. For a moment you stay still. The shelter holds a kind of gentle silence, not empty, just quiet in a way that feels complete. You can hear breathing nearby, slow and steady, a faint movement as someone else begins to wake. The world has not rushed in yet. It waits just beyond the thin layer of covering and habit. Then gradually sound returns, a low voice outside, the soft crackle of someone coaxing the fire back to life, the distant call of a bird testing the morning air. You sit up, pushing the covering aside, and step out into the cool light. The camp is already stirring. People move in familiar patterns as if guided by something deeper than conscious thought. A hand reaches for a tool without looking. Someone walks toward the river without hesitation. A child rubs their eyes and drifts toward the warmth of the fire. You notice something else. Stories. Not written, not carved, not stored in objects, but carried in the way people move and speak. A gesture that repeats, a phrase that returns, a laugh that follows a certain memory. These are not new each day. They are passed along, shaped slightly each time they are told or shown. You sit near the fire and listen. An older person begins speaking to a small group, their voice low and steady. The others gather without being called, settling into place as if they already know what is coming. The speaker's hands move gently, tracing shapes in the air, marking out places and moments you cannot fully understand but can almost feel. The children watch closely. Not all of them sit still. One shifts, another leans against an adult. But their attention returned again and again to the voice, to the movement, to the rhythm of the telling. These are stories older than any record. In a world without writing, memory must travel differently. It moves through repetition, through rhythm, through shared listening. Stories hold knowledge. They mark paths, seasons, dangers, and lessons. They connect the present to what came before, even when the details change. You realize that this is how history lives here, not as a fixed account, but as something alive. A path remembered not just by walking, but by telling. A place known not only by sight, but by story. A small but revealing point emerges as you listen. In many oral cultures, stories are structured in ways that make them easier to remember. Patterns, repetition, rhythm, and imagery help carry information across generations. Even when details shift, the core remains. You notice this in the way the speaker pauses. Certain moments are marked. A phrase returns slightly altered. A gesture repeats. The listeners respond with small sounds, acknowledgement, without interruption. The story is not a performance in the modern sense. It is a shared act of remembering. You lean closer. The fire warms your hands. Smoke drifts upward, catching the morning light. The speaker's voice continues steady and calm, weaving something that feels both familiar and distant. You wonder how many stories have been told like this. How many have been lost, entire histories carried in voices that no longer speak. Knowledge passed through generations that left no physical trace. Paths remembered in words that faded when the last person who knew them fell silent. There is a quiet uncertainty here. Without written records, it becomes difficult to trace exactly how stories changed over time. Did they remain stable, passed carefully from one generation to the next? Did they shift, adapting to new circumstances, new landscapes, new needs? The answer likely varies, just as people vary. You watch the faces around the fire. Some are intent, following every word. Others drift slightly, then return. A child repeats a phrase under their breath, testing its shape. An adult nods at a familiar part as if recognizing something already known. The story belongs to all of them. You notice how it blends with the day. As the telling continues, people begin to move. Someone rises to tend food. Another adjusts a tool. A child slips away, then returns. The story does not stop. It flows alongside action, part of the fabric of the morning. This is not a separate activity. It is woven into life. You think of modern ways of preserving information. Books, recordings, digital archives. Systems designed to capture and fix knowledge in place. Here, nothing is fixed in that way. Everything depends on memory, attention, and repetition. And yet it works. The group knows where to go, what to gather, how to survive, how to care for one another. The knowledge is there even if it cannot be extracted and stored in a form you would recognize. The speaker's voice begins to slow. The story reaches a natural resting point. Not an ending exactly, but a pause. The listeners shift, stretching, returning fully to their tasks. The moment passes without ceremony, but something remains. You feel it in the way people move afterward, in the shared understanding that does not need to be spoken again immediately, in the quiet confidence that comes from knowing you are part of a longer thread. You sit for a while longer, letting the warmth of the fire settle into your skin. The camp continues its gentle rhythm. Food is prepared, tools are used. Children move between play and learning. The day unfolds as it always does, shaped by needs, by environment, by memory. You realize that this hidden era is not silent. It is full of voices. They just do not stay where you can easily find them. They move through people, through time, through repeated telling and quiet listening. They fade, change, return, and sometimes disappear entirely. But while they exist, they hold the world together. And as you sit there listening to the last echoes of a story that will never be written down, you understand that history does not begin with ink. It begins with someone speaking, and someone else choosing to remember. The day moves forward with a quiet steadiness as if nothing has changed. And yet, as you sit near the fire, you begin to notice something subtle beneath everything you have seen. A kind of absence. Not empty, not lacking in life, but lacking in trace. So much has happened here already. People have walked, eaten, spoken, slept, laughed, worked, cared, remembered. Fires have burned. Stories have been told. Tools have been made and used. And still, when you look at the ground, you realize how little of it will remain. You stand and walk slowly across the camp. This soil shows faint impressions of feet, but they are already softening. A breeze lifts dust and carries it across the surface. A child drags a stick through the dirt, leaving a line that will vanish before the next day is done. Ash from the fire spreads outward in a thin layer, blending into the earth. Nothing here is meant to last. That is not a failure. It is simply the nature of the materials, the rhythm of the environment, the way life is lived in this time. You kneel near the place where tools were shaped earlier. Small flakes of stone lie scattered, their edges still sharp, their surfaces catching the light. These will endure. They are strong, resistant, patient. Long after everything else has faded, these pieces may remain waiting for someone to find them. But where are the baskets, the mats you slept on, the cords that tied tools together? the hides that kept bodies warm, the containers that held water, the leaves that wrapped food. They are gone already, or nearly so. Materials like wood, fibre, skin, and plant matter return quickly to the earth. They break down, soften, disappear. Unless conditions are unusually dry, cold, or waterlogged, they leave almost nothing behind. This means that what you see now is only a small part of what existed. The past is not missing because it was empty. It is missing because it was made of things that vanish. You walk toward the edge of the camp where the ground slopes gently toward the river. The soil here is darker, richer with moisture. You can see where water has passed, where plants have grown, where roots have shifted the surface over time. If this place is left behind, the river may change its path. It may cover part of the camp, then retreat again. Sediment may settle over the ground layer by layer, burying traces beneath new soil. Plants will grow their roots, weaving through what remains, breaking and moving things in slow, quiet ways. Time here does not rush. It works patiently. A small but striking example comes to mind. In rare places where conditions are just right, footprints have been preserved for thousands of years. Pressed into mud, then covered quickly by sediment, they can survive as fragile impressions of movement. Some show adults walking, others show children running, stopping, turning. But these are exceptions. Most footprints disappear within hours or days. You look down at your own. They're clear for now, pressed into the soft ground near the water. You can see the shape of your step, the slight shift of weight, the angle of your movement. For a moment it feels permanent, then a thin trickle of water slides across the surface. The edges blur, the shape softens. Soon it will be gone. You return to the centre of the camp where the fire continues its steady work. Ash builds slowly, then spreads. Charred wood breaks apart, becoming part of the soil. Bones left from meals may be scattered, broken, carried away by animals, or burned further in the fire. Even stone tools, though more durable, can be moved, buried, or lost. The record that remains is partial. It always will be. You sit near the fire and watch as someone sweeps a small area clear with a bundle of grass. The motion is simple, practical. It makes space for new work. It removes debris. It prepares the ground for what comes next. But in doing so, it also removes traces of what came before. Cleaning is part of living, and part of forgetting. You think about how future people might try to understand this place. They might find a few flakes of stone scattered in a pattern that hints at tool making. They might find a patch of darker soil where the fire once burned. Perhaps a few fragments of bone. Maybe, if they are very fortunate, something preserved in an unusual way. From that, they will try to imagine everything. The people, the voices, the relationships, the stories, the care, the comfort, the grief, the laughter. It is a difficult task. Not impossible, but incomplete. There is always more that cannot be seen. You watch as a child runs through the camp again, leaving a brief trail of movement that fades as quickly as it appears. An adult follows more slowly, calling them back. The sound of their voice carries for a moment, then dissolves into the air. Sound leaves no trace, except in memory. You begin to understand that the hidden era is not hidden because it was small or unimportant. It is hidden because it was lived in ways that did not carve deeply into the earth. It was lived lightly. That lightness allowed movement, adaptation, resilience. It allowed people to follow the changing world, to respond to shifting seasons, to survive in places that would not support heavy fixed structures. But it also means that much of it slips through the hands of time. You sit quietly, feeling the warmth of the fire, the texture of the ground, the movement of air around you. Everything here is real. Everything here matters. And yet so much of it will leave no lasting mark. You breathe in slowly. Smoke earth, faint traces of food, the distant scent of water. You breathe out. The air carries your breath away, just as it carries voices, warmth, and the small details of daily life. The hidden era is not silent. It is simply quiet in a way that does not stay. And as you sit there watching the last clear imprint of a footprint fade near the river's edge, you begin to understand how much of human life has always been like this. Present, meaningful, and gently inevitably passing beyond what can be held, The days begin to feel slightly different now. Not in a dramatic way, not with any clear signal that something has shifted, but in the small patterns that repeat and change at the same time. People return more often to certain places. Bundles are checked more carefully. Food is handled with a touch more intention. You notice it first near the edge of the camp. A patch of ground has been cleared not entirely, but enough to stand apart from the rest. The soil there is darker, softer, worked more than once. Seeds from earlier gatherings have been spread whether deliberately or by habit, and some have already begun to change. Tiny green shoots push through the earth. They're easy to miss at first, just a few pale lines against the darker soil, but once you see them you cannot unsee them. They mark a difference. You kneel beside the patch studying the small plants. They are not wild in the same way as those you saw in the open clearing. These are closer, watched. Not quite planted in neat rows, but not entirely left to chance either. A person approaches and crouches beside you, touching the soil, lightly checking the moisture, brushing aside a small stone that might block growth. There is a tension here. In many parts of the world, the transition toward more settled life did not begin with sudden fields stretching across the land. It began with moments like this: repeated return to the same ground, careful gathering, occasional tending, a growing awareness that certain places could provide more if they were not abandoned too quickly. You stand and look around the camp. It still feels temporary. Shelters remain light. Tools are easy to carry. Nothing here suggests permanence in the modern sense, and yet there is a subtle shift in how space is used. Food is being stored more deliberately. You notice a cluster of containers near one shelter carefully arranged. Seeds are kept dry, protected from damp ground. Roots are stacked in a shaded area. Some items are placed higher out of reach of small animals. The arrangement is not elaborate, but it shows planning beyond the immediate moment. Storage changes time. When food can be kept even briefly, the urgency of each day softens. The group gains a little more control over when to move, when to stay, when to rest. It is not security in the modern sense, but it is a step toward it. A child runs past, nearly stepping on the small patch of new growth. An adult quickly redirects them, guiding their path around it. The correction is gentle but firm. The patch matters. You follow the movement of the group through the afternoon. Some people still leave to gather, moving beyond the camp as they always have. Others remain tending the immediate area. The balance shifts back and forth, never fixed, always adjusting to need. There is no clear line where one way of life ends and another begins. Instead, there is a blending. You walk toward the river and notice something else. A small structure, barely more than a frame, has been reinforced. Branches are set more securely into the ground. Coverings are layered more thickly. It is still simple, still temporary, but it feels more durable than the shelters you saw before. You touch the wood. It holds firm. Perhaps the group has decided to remain here a little longer. Perhaps the availability of food, the proximity of water, the familiarity of the place have made it worth the effort. Or perhaps this is just one of many adjustments, part of a cycle that will continue to shift. It is not entirely clear. In different regions and times, people began to spend longer periods in certain places for many reasons. Stable food sources, favourable conditions, and social connections could all encourage longer stays. But even then, movement did not disappear. It remained part of life, shaping decisions in ways that resist simple categories. You return to the camp as the sun lowers. The fire is already being prepared for evening. The small patch of growth catches the last light, its green colour deepening as shadows stretch across the ground. Someone waters it carefully using a small container, letting the liquid soak into the soil. The act feels quiet, almost private. You sit nearby and watch. This is not farming as it will one day be known. There are no large fields, no permanent houses, no boundaries marked in the earth. But there is a beginning here, a shift in attention, a recognition that the land can be shaped even slightly by human presence. A detail from early sites comes to mind. In some places, the remains of ancient settlements show repeated occupation with layers building over time. Each return leaves a trace. Ash tools, plant remains, structural fragments. Over generations, these layers can form a record of gradual change, revealing how people stayed longer, built more, and began to alter their surroundings in lasting ways. You look at the ground beneath you. For now it is only one layer, but the possibility of another lies just ahead. The evening settles. People gather near the fire as they always do. Food is shared. Voices rise and fall. The rhythm of the day closes gently. The small patch of growth rests in the dim light unnoticed by some, carefully watched by others. You lean back, feeling the warmth of the fire against your skin. The hidden era does not end suddenly. It shifts, slowly, quietly. In places like this, where a group pauses just a little longer, where seeds fall and are noticed, where structures hold a bit more firmly, where memory begins to anchor itself to a specific piece of land. You watch the small plants as the last light fades. They are fragile, uncertain, easily lost, and yet they hold within them a change that will shape everything that follows. For now they simply grow. The nights feel longer now, though you cannot say exactly why. Perhaps it is the way the camp has grown more still in the evenings. Perhaps it is the way people sit closer together, not just for warmth, but for something less easy to name. Or perhaps it is simply that you have begun to notice more, and noticing stretches time in quiet ways. The fire burns steadily, its glow spreading across faces, tools, and the small patch of ground where new growth continues. You sit near the edge of the circle, watching. Something about this place feels different from when you first arrived. Not transformed, not fixed, but layered. As if each day has settled gently on top of the last, leaving behind a faint impression that has not yet faded. You look toward the small plants again. They are still there, a little taller now, a little more certain in their shape. Someone has cleared space around them once more, removing small stones and unwanted growth. The care is not constant, but it is repeated often enough to matter. Nearby, a group sorts through stored food. The containers are fuller than before, though not by much. Seeds are gathered, dried, and kept close. Roots are stacked carefully. Nothing suggests abundance in the way a modern person might imagine it. But there is a subtle difference. A margin, a little more than immediate need. You realize how much this changes the feeling of a place. When everything must be found, each day movement is constant and attention is always outward. But when something can be kept, even briefly, attention can turn inward as well. Toward the camp, toward the ground beneath your feet, toward what might remain. You notice how often people now look down, not just out. The land directly around the camp has become important in a new way. A person kneels near the fire and presses a small hollow into the soil, placing a handful of seeds inside before covering them lightly. The motion is simple, almost absent-minded, as if it has been done many times already. You watch closely. There is no ceremony, no announcement, just a quiet act repeated often enough to become part of life. The fire crackles softly beside you. Smoke rises into the darkening sky, carrying with it the scent of wood earth, and something faintly sweet from the plants drying nearby. The air cools slowly, brushing against your skin. A child wanders toward the edge of the camp, then stops at the boundary where familiar ground gives way to the unknown. They stand there for a moment, looking outward, then turn back. That boundary feels different now, not a line drawn in the earth, but a sense. A place where the known ends and the wider world begins. It has always been there, but now it carries a little more weight. You think about how places become meaningful, not through a single event, but through repetition. Returning again and again, sleeping in the same spot, gathering from the same patch, watching the same horizon at sunset. Each visit adds something, even if it leaves no clear mark. Over time, a place becomes more than a location. It becomes a memory held in many bodies. A detail from early settlements comes to mind. In some regions, archaeologists have uncovered sites where layers of occupation build slowly over long periods. Ash-broken tools plant remains, and structural traces accumulate, creating a record of repeated use. These layers are often thin at first, barely noticeable, but they grow over generations into something more substantial. You look at the ground beneath you again. It is still mostly bare, still fragile, still easy to erase. but the beginning of a layer is there. The night deepens. Stars appear one by one, filling the sky above the camp. The same patterns you noticed before return steady and patient. The firelight flickers, echoing the movement of distant stars in a smaller, warmer way. People settle into their places. Some lie down quickly, exhausted from the day. Others remain awake a little longer, speaking softly, sharing small moments that will not be remembered beyond this circle. A few sit quietly, simply watching the fire, lost in thought, or perhaps in nothing at all. You lie back on your mat, feeling its familiar texture beneath you. The ground is still firm, the air still cool, the night still vast, and yet something feels different. There is a sense of holding. Not permanence, not yet, but a slight shift toward staying, toward returning, toward building something that might last a little longer than a single visit. You close your eyes briefly, then open them again to watch the fire. The small plants rest in the darkness, unseen but present. The stored food waits nearby. The shelters stand a little more firmly than before. The paths leading away from the camp feel slightly less urgent. The hidden area is changing, not with a clear boundary, not with a moment you could point to and say this is where everything became different, but with a slow turning like the movement of the stars or the rise and fall of the tide. You breathe in deeply. The scent of smoke fills your lungs, grounding you in the present moment. You breathe out. The air carries your breath into the night where it joins everything else that has passed through this place. Tomorrow the camp may remain, or it may move. The seeds may grow, or they may fail. The memory of this place may deepen, or it may fade. Nothing is certain. And yet as you drift towards sleep, you feel the quiet weight of possibility resting just beneath the surface of everything. A future not yet formed, a change already begun. The night carries you gently, and when morning returns, it does so with a softness that feels almost deliberate. Light filters slowly across the camp, touching the edges of shelters, the faint lines of footprints, the small patch of growing green near the fire. The air is calm. Even the river seems quieter, as though the world itself is taking a slower breath. You sit up and look around. Everything is still here. The fire reduced to a bed of coals. The tools resting where they were left. The containers holding seeds and roots. The place where stories were told. The place where someone now rests beneath the earth. The path leading outward. The patch where something new is beginning to grow. It all feels both fragile and complete. You step out into the morning and walk slowly through the camp. There is no rush. A person kneels by the fire, coaxing it back to life. Another moves toward the river with a container in hand. A child watches the small plants with quiet curiosity, careful not to step too close this time. The rhythm continues, and yet as you move through this familiar space, you begin to feel something else beneath it. A kind of gentle distance, as if you are already beginning to step away from this moment, even while standing inside it. This is the nature of the hidden era. It does not announce its endings. It does not mark its transitions clearly. It simply moves, slowly, quietly, carrying people with it as the world changes around them. You walk toward the edge of the camp and pause. Beyond lies everything you have seen. The river winding through the land. The forest holding its shadows and sounds, the distant coast where waves erase their own memory, the open ground where paths exist only in the body, the cave where hands remain pressed against stone, the places where people met, exchanged, watched, waited, all of it real, all of it already slipping away. You realize now that this era did not leave almost no evidence because nothing happened. It left almost no evidence because life was lived in a way that did not insist on permanence. People moved. They adapted. They used what they needed and allowed the rest to return to the earth. They built with materials that softened, broke down, disappeared. They held knowledge in memory rather than carving it into lasting surfaces. They shaped the world but lightly. And because of that, so much of it has faded beyond easy reach. You take a slow breath and let your gaze rest on the camp one last time. There is a quiet beauty in its simplicity, a circle of warmth in a wide landscape, A place where people gather, share, care, remember, and then eventually leave. The small plants near the fire catch your attention again. They are still growing. You cannot know what will come of them. Whether this group will return here again and again, shaping the land a little more each time. Whether others will follow building on what has already begun. Whether this place will one day become something more permanent, layered with memory that settles into the earth in a way that can be found. Or whether it will fade entirely, leaving behind only the faintest trace. The uncertainty feels right. You turn back toward the fire. The camp is waking fully now. Voices rise gently, movement returns. The day begins as it always has, shaped by need, by habit, by the quiet knowledge carried in each person. You walk once more through the centre of it, past the tools, past the shelters, past the place where stories live in memory, past the place where someone rests beneath the ground, past the patch of growing green. Each step feels steady but also lighter, as though you are moving not just through space but through time itself. You reach the far edge and stop. The path ahead is open. Behind you, the camp continues, already beginning to fold this moment into its past. And slowly, gently, you begin to step away. Not with a sense of loss, but with understanding. This era was never meant to be held in full. It was meant to be lived, to move, to change, to leave just enough behind for those who come later to wonder, to search, to imagine. You take one final look. The smoke rises into the morning sky. The fire breathes. The people move. The land holds them for now. And then you turn and the path carries you forward into a future where some of these patterns will grow stronger, settle deeper, leave clearer marks, but never quite lose the quiet shifting nature that defined them from the beginning. The hidden era does not end. It simply becomes something else. And as you walk on, the memory of it stays with you not as a fixed image, but as a feeling. Warm, faint, enduring in its own quiet way. Now dim the world even further. Let the fire settle into a soft glow, barely more than a breath of warmth in the dark. The voices fade one by one until only the smaller sounds remain. A distant night call, the gentle shift of air through trees, the quiet rhythm of your own breathing. You are no longer walking, no longer watching, just resting within the memory of it all. The river moves somewhere far away, steady and unhurried. The stars return above, patient and unchanged. The land holds its shape in darkness, familiar even when unseen. Everything softens. The edges of thought blur like footprints fading in damp soil. The details slip away, not lost, but no longer needing to be held so tightly. There is nothing left to follow, nothing left to understand, only the feeling of having been there, of having walked quietly through a time that asked for nothing more than attention and offered everything in return. The warmth fades just enough. The night deepens, and you drift gently carried by the same slow rhythm that has always guided human rest long before memory was written, long before history was recorded. Just breath, just quiet, just sleep. Sweet dreams,